Eyone Williams is a former federal inmate and shot caller for the D.C. Blacks, the most populous and violent African-American gang in the federal prison system. Eyone came of age in the late 1980s in Washington, D.C., which was, at the time, the murder capital of the country. When he was just 16 years old, he was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life inside the federal prison system, because remember, in Washington, D.C., every crime is treated as a federal crime. Eyone gives fascinating insight into who the D.C. Blacks actually are and how they exist as nomadic prisoners inside federal penitentiaries throughout the country. The stories are insane. From the infamous Lorton Penitentiary, which was known at the time as the Killing Factory, to understaffed private prisons where he and his gang rioted against the COs, to finally bidding in the major leagues at USPs like Lee County and Lewisburg, Eyone has seen it all and done it all. Today, he's an accomplished author of urban fiction. Check out his books at EyoneWilliams.com, as well as his YouTube page, DC Blacks. Links to those will be in the description of this episode. And make sure to check out the Patreon with Eyone, where he talks about what he did after he got out of prison. Turns out he's quite the accomplished drug dealer. That was a fascinating chat. Patreon.com/TheConnect All right, guys, this was an odyssey, so buckle up. Eyone Williams, right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell. Tell us about DC. Tell us about growing up in DC during that era. And you know what I mean by that era.
All right, that's a good way to start off. I didn't think you was going to start off there because, to start off in that era is to skip childhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, tell us about that then. Tell us about, what kind of family you grew up in.
All right, cool. That's perfect. All right, I was born in the 70s. I'm 48 years old. I was born in 1977. I was born to teenage parents. My mother was 16, my father was 17. So I can't tell you much about the 70s other than me and you was just talking and I know a little history, but I can't tell you anything from memory of the 70s. My memories go back to at least the early 80s. In the early 80s, as I told you, my mother and father were teenage parents. So my father went to prison when I was probably about 4 years old. He went to what's called Lorton. I'm sure we'll get into that. And my mother's had, both of them had drug problems, although they was in the streets as well. Back in the day, even if you had a drug problem, you still might have ran the streets. So if you ran the streets, you still could have had a drug problem. The drug of choice at that time for inner city Washington, D.C. was heroin. And my mother ended up having an OD from heroin at about 6 years old. So that's about 2 years after my father went away. And
she passed from that OD?
She died. My mother died. That was a tragic event in my life. When my mother died, I was 6 years old, and I didn't fully understand what she died from or how she died, so I can't really speak to that now. Of course, later in life I did, and I could speak to that. But I had a Southern grandmother that's from North Carolina, from the South, which is why when we spoke a little bit about D.C. being kind of like a southern state. A lot of people don't know that a lot of the black people that came to the District of Columbia migrated from the South and went to other places, just like my grandmother, for an example, which is my mother's mother, had 16 siblings. Those 16 siblings from the Sherm family migrated to D.C., Baltimore, New York, Cleveland, and I'm leaving one of these cities out, but those are the only ones that I really remember because I visited those people there. So anyway, to make a long story short, to go back to the childhood part, my grandmother raised me, and I was born at Howard University Hospital. Howard University Hospital played a big role in my life and a lot of black people, period, if they had been there for a couple generations, like myself and my family. And then my grandmother stepped in at 6 years old and began to raise me. And but I told that part of that story out of place a little bit. When my father went to jail, my grandmother basically took over because my mother was still running around. My mother went to prison and stuff, a few little skirmishes with the law as well. My grandmother actually died 4 months before my mother, which adds a whole lot of conflict to, life and what was going on in the household at that time. But my aunt, which is my mother's sister, in my opinion, although I still made a bunch of tragic, life-changing mistakes without her, I don't know, I like to believe that a lot of things are predestined, but just to speak on a human level, like without my aunt, I don't know if I would have been dead earlier or on death row or some other type of situations, because as much as I royally messed my life up with certain mistakes that I made as a teenager, she was always there to help me then, help me while I was in, and help me get back out, and help to transition from, being a a more educated criminal, because when you go to the feds and you go to prison, not just the feds, when you go to prison, if you survive prison, even if you change your life and you become rehabilitated or you find a new purpose, I think unless you got a mental problem, you're still a better criminal because you learn things there. So she helped me even in transitioning out of that stage too. But
what happened to your father? How long was he down for?
My father did, during the time of my childhood, my father had to do at least 6 years. I'm gonna say from like 81 to like 87.
Yeah.
And that was Lorton. That's for armed robbery. Nothing, no major organized crime stuff. Like I said, you know, my father was a teenage parent to me, and amongst different little hustles and stuff he was doing, because my father was a good hustler, a good gambler on a average level. I'm not saying that it's gonna make the paper, but when I was a kid and I was growing up, after he had done prison and he had came home, I met friends of his, and I met a lot of his friends when I went to prison, sadly, too.
Yeah. So you missed, wow, you lost everybody by the time you were 6 years old.
Everybody in the house,
Yeah.
except for my aunt.
Yeah. And she's the one who raised you and saved you. Now tell us about, because you were young when you fell.
Never heard nobody say it like that, but saved is a good word.
Yeah. I hear people say that prison just makes you a better criminal if you choose to let it, you know. But everybody's got a choice, and that's what you said. Like it is a school for crime if you go in there like that. But I'm not so sure that if you don't choose to put yourself in it, short of like self-defense, I don't think it's gonna. If you say I'm not going back to that, I think you can avoid it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, because you made the pretense of what you're saying, if that's what you want to do. But remember when talking to me, although I agree with it, but remember when talking to me, I went to prison at 16. I ain't talking about juvenile. So whatever I chose to do, right or wrong, I was still very impressionable. So sometimes I speak as if other people understand that, and I forget that some people go to prison at 40 years old, 30 years old. They're already adults. They've already been paying mortgages and rents and tuitions and things like that. When you go to jail as a kid, which I went to jail, I never referred to myself as a kid when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But
you were.
But when you go to jail and you get a 15 to life sentence, a lot of times for short I just say a life sentence because technically that's what it is. But I was thinking about things we might talk about, and I just wanted to get the specifics while I was talking to you because a lot of people may see it and may not understand. But when you get a life sentence of any sort as a kid, I don't personally believe it has the same effect as it has, good or bad, more severe or less severe for an adult. But for to go to jail as a kid when I 16 years old and get charged as an adult, you don't really know what's coming your way next. And certain things, and when I say certain things, I'm speaking specifically about violence, right? Certain things you're gonna have to learn just to survive. So, you know, I was speaking from that aspect, but by the time I think I took control of what left of my life was to take control of while in prison, it was at an era in time or a point in time whereas though I'm not sure how much you or some of the, the viewers that follow your platform may know, but the Supreme Court has now agreed with science on the development of the brain. I'm sure you're aware of all this. So now they're saying that your brain doesn't fully develop to 20 or 25 years, and laws have been changed based on this. Some of these laws that affect juvenile lifers all over the country came from some of the stuff I'm talking about right now. But I just say that to say that at the point in time that the law has says that you mature, is the point in time that I began to mature in prison. So I kind of fit the trajectory of everybody that want to proclaim that they have been rehabilitated. Now, I don't want to get too nerdy because I'm into all type of reading, right? But I used to always have intellectual debates with the aunt that I was telling you about, that it was no reason for me to attempt to be rehabilitated or to be rehabilitated, because if you look into the definition of the word rehabilitate, you take rehabilitate mean that you were already ready. In my situation, I was never already ready. It was nothing to rehabilitate myself to. I needed to fix myself and change myself into something. Now, you know, that's no disrespect to my family. They gave me a lot of tools, right? But at 16 years old, I couldn't buy a pack of cigarettes. I couldn't buy liquor. I didn't have a driver's license. So it's just so many tools. And I'm gonna just use the word tools that I just didn't have. It's no way to go say, oh, I'm gonna rehabilitate myself and go back to a point in time when I wasn't like this. It was never no time other than childhood innocence when I was anything different than that. But
no, you barely had a chance to live before you fell. That's why the Supreme Court, I think they banned life in prison for minors because it's
that come from the laws that I'm talking about. Come from Montgomery and this other case out of Florida and Alabama, Florida and Louisiana that passed these laws. Some of those laws are the reason that people like me are not in prison no more in the D.C. system. Although I got out 10 years before that law. That's another story too.
Okay, so you barely knew your father. He came home, and
I'm not gonna say I barely knew him. I knew my father very well because I saw him every weekend. Lorton is a different type of place. I saw my father 2-3 times a week, so I knew him very well. I can't let you say that.
Wow. Okay, so you went and visited him, and you stayed in touch. Okay, that's something.
I mean, and it's not just me. A lot of kids that unfortunately had parents in Lorton, because Lorton is only 20, 30 minutes away from Washington, D.C. If you had a father or a parent, because there was some women there too back in the day, it's a little different. That's another, I don't want to make it seem like such a sad story, but when D.C. and Congress got rid of Lorton and the D.C. Department of Corrections, and now they send men, which are convicted criminals, all over the country, it's a further strain on that family unit there. And my father was able to instill some manly principles in me as a boy because I was able to see him multiple times a week.
Okay, but now they shoot people that catch cases in D.C. all over the country.
You might end up in Victorville.
Right.
You might end up in Coleman. You might end up in Oregon.
Right. Okay, so explain this, because this is the fascinating technicality about crime and punishment in Washington, D.C., because it's not a state, of course. It's a district. It's its own autonomous city-state, for lack of a better term. So
that's exactly right.
If you catch a case in Washington, D.C., even if it is not a federal crime, you end up going to the feds.
Is
that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. Now, let me put a little bit of my opinion in it before I go to just the facts, right? When people say certain things are not federal crimes, technically that's correct, okay? But the court systems of D.C. is based on this right here, set up like this. You have a federal court. You and many people are aware of what goes on in federal court, mostly white-collar crimes or RICO conspiracies and different things like that. But in the District of Columbia, which is Washington, D.C., it's a federal district. It only had a federal court there as opposed to counties and states that had a federal court, a state court, and a court underneath that, whether it be circuit court, which is a big court in the state system, or a district court, which is a small court in the state system. D.C. had none of that. But D.C. had a bunch of street crime, armed robbery, gambling, prostitution. Let's just go there. We ain't got to go to none of the big crimes. The federal courts in D.C. got tired of dealing with it. It created a court specifically in the federal court that was called a court for general sessions. In layman's term, that's court for riffraff. Murder, armed robbery, pickpocket, that's those small crimes. So they created what is called D.C. Superior Court in the early 70s to relieve the U.S. District Court of riffraff crime. That's the other court. So staying on topic about what I'm saying is that everything is federal. So even though they created another court and created a whole other code of law, which is called D.C. Code, in reference to the parallel of federal code, which is U.S. Code, the D.C. Code laws have been created from the federal laws by the U.S. attorney. So to go back to the overall thing, as long as you don't commit a crime that's considered a misdemeanor, misdemeanors are prosecuted by what's called the Attorney General of the District of Columbia. This is a local official. But everything else, even when you go to Superior Court, even my charge, I caught a murder charge at 16 years old. I was prosecuted by the United States Attorney in Superior Court. So what I'm saying to you and anybody who may not understand it is, even at 16, I was prosecuted by the United States government, not a local government, because our local government does not prosecute felonies.
Yeah, there is no state, so therefore there's no state court.
You get it? So everything you do, like a lot of people just say everything you do is federal, everything is feds, but for sure you are prosecuted by the United States Attorney.
So you could get in a fight in a bar in the District of Columbia, a bar fight. Some guy pulls out a knife, you pull out a gun, you shoot him to death. You catch, that would be normally a state charge. That would be like manslaughter 2 or something like that. Second degree manslaughter, that would be a state case. You do 5, 7, 8, 10 years. But if you do that in D.C., you're going to go to the feds for that.
You're going to go to the feds, but not because of what we're talking about. Let me give it to you in a short way. The only reason you go for the feds for that is because D.C. no longer has a Department of Correction. They have nowhere to send you.
Right.
When Lorton was around, Lorton closed in 2001. When Lorton was around, if you catch a case like that and it stayed low in the low court, they're going to send your behind to Lorton.
I see. So the closing of Lorton basically...
Lorton, Lorton.
Okay. You got that southern drawl.
Yeah, that's my fault.
The closing of Lorton basically condemned everybody that got caught for...
To a federal destination.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you could catch a murder over some street, and then now you're celled up next to a Colombian drug kingpin.
I'm glad you said
wild,
that, right?
Bro.
Because, and we don't have to get into that now, we might get into that later, but that is the reason that people from D.C. get so much of bad stigmas put on them, because every form of criminal goes to the feds. Mm-hmm. And when I define certain things, I'm saying, just imagine the state of New York. If it didn't have a Department of Corrections, you would see everyone from the pickpocket to the kingpin. Mm-hmm. That's why you see so much different elements of a criminal when people from the feds say, hey, I've been around DC guys. When people say they've been around DC guys, from the perspective of a person like you with a platform, or for the perspective of a person that don't know nothing about prison, the next question should be, what kind of DC guys have you been around? And I'm not asking you that, I'm saying that's the question. Because when you say, I've been around the DC guys, you might have been around riffraff. You might not have been around the elite.
Hey guys, this summer I will be on the road doing stand-up comedy plus a live episode of The Connect. On August 20th, I will be in San Diego, California. On August 21st, I will be in Chandler, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix. And then on August 24th, I will be in Plano, Texas. That's the Dallas area. Again, doing stand-up comedy plus some special guests doing a live episode of The Connect. Go to linktree.com/Johnny Mitchell or go to micdropcomedyclub.com and search my name. All three of those venues will be Mic Drop Comedy Club venues. Come out and see me. San Diego, Phoenix, Arizona, Dallas, Texas. We'll see you there.
Now, is that why the DC blacks are so ubiquitous in the federal system? Is it because there's so much riffraff out of DC and there's just so many people because there is no state system to go to? Is that the reason that's been the strongest car in amongst the African Americans in the federal system?
You say that with an element in the question that the DC blacks are the strongest car, and we skipped over if the DC blacks are even real. Like, I want to answer the question, but I want to ask you as the person that answered the question, do you believe that the DC blacks are an entity?
This is just what I've been told talking to everybody that's been in the feds.
Well, can we correct that first?
Yeah, of course.
First and foremost, there's no gang or group called the DC blacks, okay? And what I mean by that is that a certain breed of guy out of Washington, D.C., which most of them were religious guys. They was Moorish Americans, or they was guys that were NOF, Nation of Islam, Fruit of Islam, right? FOI, I mean, right? And they came into the feds in the 60s and the 70s, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons had never seen nothing like it based on that, because most people, African Americans that come from somewhere, are in some sort of gang. We didn't have gangs, but we had a group of people that the feds did not understand, and most of them wore fizzes, kufis, beards, and they were radical. Now keep in mind, they came into the federal system right after the black nationalist movements, your Black Power, your Black Panthers. These things didn't really root in DC, but things like the Moore Science Temple did root. By the time they came to the feds, and the feds couldn't label them Crip, Blood, AB, GD. They said, well, it's the guys from Washington. Well, who are the guys from Washington? The black guys. Who are they? They're the DC blacks. It was really a confusion. So I wanna get that straight right now before we even go further, because now through time and people being around guys, they have started to say DC blacks. But you interviewed a guy, I forgot his name, but he was a bulldog from Fresno. He actually said the blacks from Texas and the blacks from Florida. He said deep Florida blacks and Texas blacks. I said, that's good that he said that, because when I talk to Johnny, I can mention that some people just say the Cleveland blacks, the New York blacks. it was no different when the Bureau of Prisons started saying the D.C. blacks because they didn't know what was up with us. Now, to go past that, some people have taken it as pride and saying this and that, but there's no group that's technically the D.C. blacks. That's just some stuff that people from outside say.
So that's not when groups like the Mexican Mafia or
Those
the
are real gangs.
or the Aryan Brotherhood, when they catch big cases inside a prison, there are no cases like that on the D.C. blacks. Like
It's impossible to do.
When you go in, you don't get categorized as a DC black the way you would get categorized as an AB or a Nazi lowrider or something.
Even on paper, it's not the same thing. For an example, right? To even try to stay in the lane that you in. You mentioned the Aryan Brotherhood, you mentioned the Mexican Mafia. If we look at the Aryan Brotherhood's RICO indictment from 2001 or whenever they caught that big one, they took Barry Mills, T.D. Bigham, and all of them to court in California. They had levels, leaders, enforcers, hanger-ons, wannabes, they had all these things breaking down because that is, and this is not me screaming or revealing something that's some secret, the Aryan Brotherhood, based on their operation, based on even their members saying, I'm a commissioner, I'm this, I'm that, and the history of it, and the history of the Mexican Mafia, those are organized groups that they organize themselves. DC Blacks has no leader, has no home base, has no group, has no bylaws. That's a total creation of the feds. Now, what there is a bunch of guys that came from D.C. and we have a mentality, whether prison or not prison, we grow up with a mentality of sticking together. Keep in mind, the District of Columbia was the fugitive slave hideout. So the District of Columbia that always produced a certain type of thought. Like if we use the term hooker now, hooker goes back to Murder Bay in DC when there was lawless areas. So if you do the history on DC, a lot of stuff go with that. But my overall thing is that there's no one group that's a DC blacks. And if there was a one group that was a DC black, then I believe that we would be able to put them in the category with an Aryan Brotherhood or Mexican Mafia because the feds would have charged that group for doing something. Think in mind, when people talk about the beef, the war between the DC blacks and the Aryan Brotherhood, and they say, well, the DC blacks never did nothing. There's no one to charge. For every murder that a person could document, illustrate, or talk about pertaining to the Aryan Brotherhood, there was a murder in response, but there's no group to put it on.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it's both.
Yeah, for
maybe
what
it's
perspective?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, how do you guys keep order on the yard? There's real reason.
That's a good one.
I don't obviously glorify the gang life, but there really is good reason to have structure and order in a place as violent and just furious with rage as prison, right? Because anything could pop off. So you have to be able to discipline your own. You have to know where the drugs are coming in from. You have to make money. You have to keep rank. It's like being in war. So how do the black guys from DC, I'm just going to call them the DC blacks.
You can say the DC blacks.
The black guys from DC, how in a place like, I don't know, Hazleton or Leavenworth, I'm talking about
Leavenworth,
the worst of the worst. How do they protect themselves and organize themselves and survive?
Good question. Let me break it down to the simplest form. First and foremost, I want to say that it's prison by prison first. So, everything that you just mentioned pertaining to organized gangs, I don't want to keep mentioning those particular ones, but the ones that we mentioned and other ones, GDs, Bloods, everyone has a order, right? Prison to prison, DC are going to organize themselves. Okay, so let's just stay at Hazleton since you asked that one joint. The same order that these gangs may have, which may come from structure or what I'm going to, leisurely say, some bureaucratic, right? Just putting it together. But in DC, in a specific prison like a Hazleton, it's going to be run by the guys that have the trust and the people who know what they're doing the most. I don't want to single any of my homies out right this minute for the sake of what I'm talking about. But let's just say I had a homie by the name of Big Black, right? And Big Black is thorough. He been in prison 10, 20 years. He know what he doing with his hands. He know what he doing with his head. He know the law. He know the code that we live by. He knows the history. He knows whose cousin is who, whose uncle is who. And he know the history of blacks from where we from, which we gonna say D.C. blacks. He know the history with them and the Spanish guys, them and the white guys, and them and the gangs. He is gonna be one of the guys that's gonna have more say-so than some of the others. Now, since I'm talking realistically, I gotta create this other guy. We're gonna call this other guy Sosa. Sosa can get the pack in. He can get everything in, from up to down to whatever you want. If he's thorough, and we're gonna assume that Sosa is thorough, and he's from D.C., and he can get the pack in now, you had a dude that's influential. He's the jailhouse guy to know what he's doing. Sosa might be a jailhouse guy now, but he's been in jail lesser than Big Black, so he got more street connections. He could get on the phone and say, hey, babe, call him. Somebody gonna drop this off. These are the people who gonna have the most say-so. And then, not to make DC sound so terrible, but we do, unfortunately, produce a bunch of violent criminals. And I don't mean that the people are violent, like a DC guy's more violent than the rest. They prosecute violent crimes. 90-some% of the crimes that are prosecuted in the DC Superior Court are some form of violence.
Right.
So I'm just saying that now when you're looking at the personnel, if we're building you know how they say basketball teams are in reconstruction, prison yards flip. So now if we're constructing the team and we're saying, man, who we got here, Hazelden and Big Black and Sosa say, yo, we got 600 guys here. Only 200 of those guys maybe gonna pass the cut to be in the car. You get what I'm saying? So
and out of 200, 175 are killers.
I mean, if we say that, but just to be realistic, it's on the paperwork.
But it stands to reason, though. It stands to reason because if you can get prosecuted for, if all violent crime, which is normally not federal crime, is now federal crime, it stands to reason that the most African Americans, black people, are going to be from D.C., and a lot of them are going to have violent crime. So it's just reasonable, and that just makes sense.
Not only they're going to have violent crime, remember, as you just mentioned, most of the other guys that's coming through the federal system, unless they're on a RICO or CCE where murders or shootings was involved, they're going to go to their state system.
That's right.
They're going to go to Attica. They're going to go to Pelican Bay or San Quentin. They're not going to go to the feds. Right. So another one of the reasons why that's in effect is because your attempted, we don't have attempted murder in D.C. as assault with intent to kill, but you know what that is. Your attempted murder, your carjacker, your armed robber, that's all it is. So when we have to pick from the dudes who gonna roll, man, Joe Blow just stole, Joe Blow owe us $5,000 and he ain't paying and he got a crew and we got to go see them, hypothetical, right? When the D.C. guy look around to who they had to support, almost every one of us are in there for a violent crime. Let me put it that way. So I'm not gonna say that this guy right here from Cleveland is less thorough, less dangerous than us. But when you look at all of them right there, I just picked Cleveland out of hat. Shout out to Cleveland, I got family there. But you're gonna see a drug dealer, a pimp, some type of guy that might have a fraud case. You're not gonna see near one of them, not that you don't have any of them that have violent charges, you're not gonna see none of them from any jurisdiction in there solely on a violent charge. That's not what the feds do.
That's right. So basically it sounds like the DC Blacks, it's a structure or a loose organization just based on seniority, what you bring to the
geographical area is very important,
and what you bring to the table. Like, can you bring a balloon in?
I never heard that like that, but I would
and
agree.
Can you kill? And are you willing to kill?
I ain't gonna say are you willing to kill. Ultimately, you might say are you willing to kill, but are you with the team? Are you with the men or you not? Just like when DC, for an example, when I first went to Leavenworth, it was only 2 tables. I didn't do this, so I'm gonna act like I did it, but we had some homies that grabbed tables and put them together like we not standing up. You don't have to figure out as you gonna kill, as you not gonna kill, are you with it or you not with it? If you're not with it, you're not with us. So like, for the sake of what you're saying, ultimately, yeah, you willing to kill? If you, I got a homie that'll tell you, I'm not gonna say his name though, I got a homie that's very serious and he'll tell you, if you're not trying to do this, don't come get me. But he will tell you that if you with what I'm gonna do, I'm not trying to leave nobody breathing. That's an extremist. So I don't have nothing but respect for a guy that's gonna give you that type of warning, because a lot of people don't know what they're getting into. So we don't have to say, are you gonna kill? But when you go to war And in the feds, I never understood them guys that just end a bunch of, I see these videos on the internet that it's 5, 6, 7, 10 people jumping on a guy, and the guy get up and walks away. I'm not here to promote or condone no violence, but when it's wartime, it's not about playing. And that's all I'm gonna say on that though. So when certain guys from DC, and this is how we get certain names, because everybody from DC is not violent, contrary to popular belief. But the ones that are into bringing that wrath when it's time, some of my buddies are not into fighting. I had some buddies that the average boxer beat them silly, but their mentality is so extreme that they not trying to box no way.
Yeah. The average person sleeps about a third of their life. You sleep 8 hours a day. Why not invest in a mattress that's going to improve your sleep and improve your life? Brooklyn Bedding just sent me one of their mattresses, and let me tell you what, they have a customer for life. I am never going back. Okay, for one, fiberglass. They don't use any fiberglass in their mattresses. Do you know most of the leading mattress brands use fiberglass? That can't be good for you. Okay, Brooklyn Bedding, none of that, all right? They offer a 120-night comfort trial. Love it, or they'll help you return it or swap it hassle-free. That's a can't-beat deal, all right? Do you sleep hot? I certainly do. Brooklyn Bedding uses Glacio-Tex covers and Copper Flex foam to help keep you cool and comfortable all night long. And of course, one size does not sleep all. If you're not sure which mattress is right for you, just take the Brooklyn Bedding sleep quiz and find your perfect match in under 2 minutes. Brooklyn Bedding handcrafts every mattress in their Arizona factory. No middlemen, no gimmicks, just top-tier quality, honest pricing, and real American craftsmanship for a better night's sleep. Not sure you could take my word for it? You can. I wouldn't lie to you. Brooklyn Bedding has been awarded the best mattress by CNET and best hybrid mattress by Wirecutter, so you know it's the real deal. Go to brooklynbedding.com and use my promo code CONNECT at checkout to get 30% off site-wide. That's almost a third of a whole-ass mattress off when you use promo code CONNECT. This offer is not available anywhere else, so you got to use that promo code. That's Brooklyn Bedding, Brooklyn like the borough, brooklynbedding.com, and promo code CONNECT for 30% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. brooklynbedding.com, promo code CONNECT. Okay, so 16 years old. God, so young. You're just a boy still. But, that's the era where you grew up fast, Tell us what happened. How did you end up catching your 15 to life?
I ain't never heard nobody asking like that. All right, to give you a real version, in my teenage years, after I started getting in trouble, I went to Juvenile a couple times, gun charge, driving without a license, some minor stuff. The only one I got convicted of was carrying a gun in junior high school. But I went to juvenile, real juvenile for those charges. And where I'm from, your juvenile detention facilities were seating all in Oak Hill. So I went through there a couple times with my first interactions and skirmishes with the law for drug dealing or gun charge or driving without a license. But I started selling drugs in between this era and time. So between I want to say 88, 89, right? When I first started playing around with selling drugs, selling cocaine, right?
11 years old, you're selling crack, I assume, vialed up?
Yeah. Only 12 years old specifically. My birthday's in the summer, so that summer between 11 and 12, I started selling coke, you know what I mean? And we started selling wholesale back then. It wasn't no major connect. For $50, you get 5 20 rocks. For a $100 bill, you get 10 20 rocks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's how you would start, unless you came from a family that already had it like that.
Right.
But you could get wholesale coke like people go to Walmart and get bread these days back then. But I wasn't no major player in that. I don't know how much of you a major player you're going to be at no 12 and 13 years old. But as I started to learn more about selling drugs, I had cousins that was hustling, and I had uncles. And my father that was, I'm gonna call them significant players, right? For lack of a better term. But in the process of growing and hustling, I started to, buy a quarter ounce, a half an ounce, a whole ounce, and then you stop buying crack and you start buying powder. I heard you talk to somebody about that, so many people know that. By the time I start buying powder, I understand the chemistry of putting it in a bowl with water and pulling it out hard. Now I understand why you don't buy hard and you do buy soft, right? And I start buying my work from a particular person. I mean, people who don't know my case. I just don't feel like on the dead or none of that right there. But in the process of doing that, I started learning that, you know, some coke or some product is better than others. This particular guy was, you know, buying some work from him from a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden the work wasn't what it was supposed to be. I had a problem with that. And I'm 16 at the time, so you know my maturity and my judgment skills is not what they are right now.
But you're 16 is old enough to be stupid. It's old enough to act like a grown man. Like, I got brolic now, you know, I buy ounces. You can't give me some that's not going to come back.
I mean,
or I'm
even
come
when I got
you.
past the ounces, that's what the problem was. Once I learned how to cook it and I got past ounces, now I'm at 62, now I'm at 125.
Wow.
I'm like...
That's a lot of coke for a teenage boy. That's a lot of coke.
It was some guys that was my age that was more advanced and sophisticated than me.
Wow.
I mean, to the point where they the whole thing.
That's crazy.
Now, I mean, it's Washington D.C. Don't, like, you know, not to throw it off, but you know, it was the murder capital. We had the king of crack cocaine allegedly there, like
Rayful.
Well, that's what they name him. But yeah, that guy was there at that time. You know what I mean? And a lot of other guys like him. You know what I mean? But I'm not saying this to, you know, to lean no allegiance towards him. I'm just saying that anyone that has read about or know anything about the late 80s, early 90s in D.C., you will hear his name. There's no way I can overlook that, right? But
it's just fascinating because that was such a brief phenomenon in urban American history that like 16-year-olds could have 1,000 grams of cocaine, and you're operating like adult business when you should be like learning to drive and like finger banging.
But I know a couple guys. I never
chicks.
operated as an adult, like an adult business at my age and time, and I don't want to blow myself up, but I'm saying, and I'm still on the 16. What happened? I ain't lost that part, but I have a lot of buddies between 15 and 20 years old. I ain't gonna say a lot of them. A handful of buddies between 15 and 20 years old, and other guys from Washington, D.C. can stamp this, that were millionaires.
Wow.
You know, it's a guy by the name of Mustafa Tariq, right? And he talks about a guy named Big Head Gary. Anybody who follows the whole Alpo, Rich Porter story, which has been told 1,000 times, I'm not here to regurgitate that, but in his D.C. response to that, he was explaining how he went to school with this guy, Big Head Gary. And he said that Big Head Gary was a millionaire in high school. How many people know millionaires in high school? Now, this is not my story, so I can't go too deep into it, but I'm telling you that this is not an anomaly in old school D.C. drug dealing lore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's unreal. I mean, the only teenage millionaires back then are literally Long Island politicians' kids that are spoiled, like the Kennedy kids.
Oh, but you're talking about
and black guys from. I'm just talking. Bro, I'm just saying. I'm just telling. I'm trying to explain to people how wild the crack era was. Teenagers are millionaires unless you're literally scions of the wealthiest people in America or ghetto kids from DC that had a plug. That's wild. There is no middle class kids like me like envied black guys from the hood because we weren't around a bunch of crackheads who would buy drugs from us. Like if I'm 16 from Portland, Oregon, from like a really normal 2-parent household, I can't just hop into the drug game like kids from the Northwest DC could. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of a fascinating dichotomy. Now, ultimately, everything fell apart and, you know, it ruined communities around the country. But
Portland, Oregon had a bunch of open air drug markets you could, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it probably never did.
But we talking about, hold on, I ain't talking about now on the future, but let's go back to the 80s and the 90s. I don't want to get into systematic racism and all this other stuff my aunt be talking about, but for sure, I didn't, those opportunities were everywhere in D.C.
No.
I used to catch the bus to school through multiple neighborhoods. I might catch the bus to school, like I live in a part of Northwest that's, it's almost by Maryland, right? And DC is like a diamond, so I'm all the way at the top of the diamond. But I had to catch the bus all the way downtown and then all the way back across town because this was the only way to get to this particular white neighborhood that my aunt found a way to get me in school in, right? And I say that to say that I seen the whole city as I used to travel on this bus at 13 and 14. I might have drove while I was still in the inner city part going down 14th Street or going down 13th Street. I might have drove or rode on the bus through 20 drug strips. So drug strips were normal to me as a kid. And I think everybody that grew up in the 80s and the 90s in DC, at least that lived in the inner city, they would tell you that, like, from block to block, like from my neighborhood, I grew up on 5th Street, but the first hood would be Rittenhouse. Then there would be Kennedy Street. Then there would be Crittenden Street. And then you get down to Morton. And I can do this all the way down the whole street. Every street had an operation. I'm not gonna say it was like The Wire, but every street had their own homegrown cluckers and junkies, had their own homegrown dudes that's doing their thing, whatever it was, up, down, weed, whatever it was. That was everywhere in DC. I thought it was normal.
That's what I mean. It was a tremendous, I know it's poison and ultimately it's ruinous to the community, but it was a tremendous economic boom to young black people. And you know, it is an anomaly in American history, and I'm glad it's over, but it was, you know, I talked to guys from Harlem.
Might be over.
Yeah, I talked to guys from Harlem. I'm like, that used to just off like 50 grand a night, you know, in '89. I'm like, can you imagine if you just bought those buildings up there? You guys will be have Trump money, you know. Now, of course, but when you're 19 and you grow up in that environment, there is no respect for money. You don't know what it is. You think it's normal, but I'm just trying to tell you, it is an anomaly, and it was not normal.
Gotcha.
But so this is the environment that's so fascinating. So this is the environment that you are selling drugs in as a teenager.
As a very, very small spoke in the wheel, though.
So you're picking up 120 grams of coke. It's not nothing. You can really turn that around when you're cooking it up and making real money.
I learned how to make mistakes and fix it.
Okay, so
and you can only do that with a couple extra grams.
Okay, so you're buying your Connect sells you bad work.
One time, well, yeah. I'm gonna say that because even at times before that, maybe I didn't know I was getting spanked since I was so young back then. But yeah, I can honestly say that. But the junkies, as we used to call them, going to inform you of what you have as soon as you hit the block back then when you were younger. And what I used to do, I used to, my father, as I spoke to you about my mother and my father, they came from dope dealing. Anybody that knows guys that sold dope know that you get up early to do it. I was so young, I didn't know the difference between dope and coke, and I noticed that some of my family members, going back to my father and them, they had to, whether they was on it or selling it, right? They got started early in the morning. And when I ventured off and I ended up started selling yay, I thought that you're supposed to get up early in the morning. That's really not a coke thing. But I created a rush that used to come at 8 or 9 in the morning just for me. So I found little ways like that to separate myself from other guys that was my age, like some of my homies that had better opportunities. Like I got a homie that his big brother sold weight. He never competed with me. His big brother had weight. His big brother sold 8 for keys. Yeah. You dig what I'm saying? Like he might get a brick and make 8 packages out of it. 8, he's gone, he's done. And 8 sales, the whole brick gone.
Right.
I didn't have that opportunity. And one of the reasons I probably didn't have that in my life, not that I'm regretting it, but I thought about this when I was thinking about our interview, is that I had uncles around me like a guy named Michael Salders Frey, a guy named Wookie, dude named Eddie Mathis. These guys 30 years older than me, but they were the at the time. They were so important that when I decided that I wanted to get into the streets, their friends and their associates would not embrace me. They was like, nobody gonna tell your mother or your grandmother that I. So I had a hard time doing. I had to work my way up around peers that was my age. For an example, like first quarter ounce I ever got, I got from a homie that was only a year older than me that was buying an onion. You know, so he getting 28 grams, he gonna give me 7. But I never had those opportunities like some of my other buddies or some of my homies that was they came from families. You know, some families pride themselves on not necessarily being criminals, but underground black market living. You know what I mean? Like, I know some people that have no credit, but they might got hundreds of thousands. Not now. I'm talking about back then when that money was all around, like we just spoke about. You know, their grandmother's the only one that owned the house. All the nephews is drug dealers and bank robbers, but the house has never been repossessed because nobody gonna let that house go.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, but you were pretty good. You were pretty motivated. So you had at 15, 16, you had like crack lines early in the morning.
Not lines, but I'm just out there first. So yeah, I had a rush that was coming. I mean, when I say lines, and I'm not trying to downplay it, right? When I say lines, I'm thinking like the Y where they lined up around the corner. But I had regulars.
Wow.
And that rush would come in the morning. The people that was looking for Lil Rez or Lil Eyone, they was there at 8 or 9 o'clock on Rittenhouse, 5th and Rittenhouse. And that's because I learned to get out there faster than. Well, my man Goo Blacks, he dead now. I don't mind mentioning his name, but we had a homie named Goo Blacks, and he was our age, but he was so advanced, and just in my part of town, he was so advanced in hustling that, like, I ain't even gonna lie, I learned from him. I learned certain things like tricks. For an example, I'll give you a trick. One of my other little homies, he had some yay from another part of town that he brought to our part of town, and he was selling. It was better than ours. So my man Blacks was like, E, you ain't gotta do nothing, man. He said, man, them junkies, yeah, this shit better. He said, man, go out there and do 2 for 1. I said, if I do 2 for 1, then I ain't gonna make no money. He said, you will make some money, you're just not gonna make the same amount. If you go out there and do 2 for 1, all your shit gonna go, then you're gonna come back, and whatever your profit is in that. So say, for instance, I spent $1,000, right? And I would normally make back $2,000. If I do 2 for 1, I'm making $1,500, but I might make $1,500 2 or 3 times before he finished out. So I learned to do certain things like that. And then I had a New York homie that taught us the tricks with the vials. Where when I was growing up, we sold coke in bags. We had a homie from New York that brought the vials down. A lot of people who ever sold vials, you could play illusion games with vials. So I just started learning little stuff like that. I mean, and even at this point in my life now where, you know, I'm writing and I'm doing stuff with film, I'm always trying to find a way to bring the illusion to the play.
Marketing.
Yeah.
So it taught you marketing at a young age. Yeah. Okay, so were you going to school when the coke really started to ramp up? Did you drop out of school?
See, like we had moved so fast. Before I even got in trouble, bro, I was a hell of an athlete. School was my thing. Like you had, when I was growing up in Washington, D.C., school was the spot to go before there was the club. For us, the club was the go-go. So after school, when you in that era, you might go to the go-go, and before social media, Instagram, and all that stuff, people know you by what you do when you go to the club. I'm saying that for the go-go. But school was the first stage for me to dress, to rap, to box, and I was a good football player. I was one of the best football players, junior high school football players the year before I went to prison. We actually went undefeated and won the first junior high school Washington D.C. public school championship. So, you know, at all those times, you know, I was really just living off of who my family was. Like, I didn't have to break no law to go to school to look fresh, you know, at that time, like some of the other guys. So at that part of the childhood, you know, we kind of skipped over it, but sports and just looking good was a Northwest Uptown D.C. thing then. Being tough, being a thug, I mean, looking good came with hustling. So hustling was always a part of Uptown thing. But as far as gunplay and that murder capital stuff that came in later, that came by force. Not just in my life, but for the whole city, I would say. I mean,
so you were selling crack, but also playing sports and going to school.
You had to go to school in order to go to the game.
Of course.
I can't lie about that.
So did you catch your case while you were in school?
I was in the 9th grade. I was only in high school for 2 months when I caught the case. I run. Matter of fact, I started going to school once the homicide came to my aunt's house. Because then I realized that, you know, I'm not going to say I realized it wasn't a joke because it never was a joke. But I realized that they're going to charge my ass as an adult this time. Like, I never cared about the life with the juvenile life. I never cared with I never cared about that. But when I realized that they was going to charge me as an adult, and although I didn't get 20 to life and they turned the time up, all I remember back in that day is all of my buddies that had went in on murder had got 20 to life. So in my head at 16, I was like, damn, they gonna give me 20 to life. But in all actuality, they was giving a bigger number by the time I got in. They was giving 36 to life for first degree murder.
Even for minors?
once you charge as an adult,
Oh, that's right.
kill the minor. None of those. No, that's not just for you, but a lot of people when I talk, they'll say minor.
Yeah.
You get none of that applies no more.
What? So was there a cutoff? Like, was 16 made you an adult? Was there like an age? So they could charge you with murder as an adult at 14?
Not in D.C. In D.C., you got to be at least 15.
Okay.
But they just changed some laws under Title 16, which is the D.C. law that allows them to charge us as that, and now you have to be 16. We're going to skip the whole 15-year-old thing because some of that's gray. It don't matter. But there are like 9 charges. And I can tell you the main ones. Murder, assault with intent to kill, and something else. We can just stop at those, right? But it's something like 9 charges no matter what you do. If you're 17 to 15, you're going to get Title 16 and charged as an adult. They took the 15 off for some of them, but for sure, 16 and 17, there are some automatic charges. And I do want to make a point before we move on past the automatic charges. There's a case called United States versus Kent, a young teenager that was robbing post offices in D.C. in the 50s. A post office is equivalent to a bank for people who don't know. Yeah. So he's automatically charged as an adult, and he did it at a time when they didn't have a D.C. Superior Court, which I just explained to you. So he was automatically fed. It wouldn't have mattered. But being as though it was a post office, it was equivalent to a bank. His case created laws for all juvenile offenders across the whole country. D.C. is so wicked. They passed parallel laws so that the laws that the Supreme Court gave to all juvenile offenders would not apply for D.C. young offenders. For D.C. young offenders, the United States Attorney's Office has the sole authority to charge you as adults. That's not like that nowhere else in the country. Everywhere else in the country, you are supposed to get a hearing before you go to an adult court. D.C., and they may have changed it now since the last time I researched it, is at least one of the only jurisdictions that the United States Attorney has the sole authority to prosecute you and send you to adult court. So that's what was going to happen to me regardless and other people.
Wow.
So that's the deal. Go back to the 16 thing you just said.
Okay, so tell us about the case, man.
All right, so I gave you the, how I got there. So at the end, by the time, I used to hang with some robbers too. For an example, I went to Juvenile and I met some guys that was into other things. That's why we had that conversation about adult prison, that you become a better criminal. I went to Juvenile as just a dude that was selling drugs, and I came out of Juvenile and turned into a robber. Why? I had another cousin that knew where my stash was at while I was in Juvenile. He ran through my stash up, and it's so crazy that he ran through my stash. My stash went number about an ounce and like $1,100 and a pistol. He found the stash, ran through all the money, all the drugs, put nothing back. The only thing was in the stash when I got home was a .32 automatic. And I took that .32 automatic and started going on robberies with some of my buddies that was robbers. But getting to the case, as you select people who may be a lick, these people ended up becoming a lick for me and my man, because I was saying, yo, I think we gonna get them. They was playing with the So instead of me just doing something to anybody, we gonna get them.
Who's them?
These are the people that I was buying the work from at first, as I told you earlier. So let's bring it all the way back up to speed. So when we plotting this robbery, these dudes done sold me something that's incorrect. Now I want to do something to get them back. Instead of me just doing something violent, making it a beef, we turned it into an armed robbery. So I called Joe Blow, lured him to the location to rob him. Joe Blow brought another person with him. As an adult, if I was still a criminal, I probably should have called it off, because now there's something, there's an element that is not a part of it. And I'm just thinking about that while we talking. But anyway, in my young, stupid, immature mind, I said to myself, man, this, I'm gonna kill both of them. And, in the process of that, I'm gonna take this and then we gonna finish what we doing, and we gonna keep it moving. Like nothing ever gonna happen. Right. But anyway.
How much work did you order from him?
At that time, we only ordered a 62, but he only came with an onion.
Okay.
So in the process of that, when they get, he was like, I only got an onion left and this and that. His man, and I don't think I ever told this story before, his man realized that something was wrong. And his man said, let's get back in the car. We got out the car to negotiate some stuff, and I'm telling you some elements of the story that I never really talked about, but I pled guilty to it. So the only thing I ever want to be careful about is not really to disrespect the people's family. Yeah. As far as the mistakes we made, we was in a game, man. Yeah. But let's get back to that. So anyway, when the dude started to realize that, this is not a regular drug deal, that this might be a robbery or this might be a kidnapping, his buddy was like, come on, man, let's get back in the car. Eyone, you get up front. In the murder capital era in probably the whole country, but specifically in Washington, D.C., a person will be better off shooting you and killing you than telling you to get in the front seat. Okay,
Yeah.
do I need to? Or that's cool? All right. In my mind, I'm not even gonna lie. Once I was told to get in the front seat, in my head, I was gonna hit everybody. So what I did was, I'm already holding the work. Like the work is in my hand. Technically I could walk away, but I'm so young and I'm thinking, damn, they know where I live at. Damn, they older than me. Damn, they could get somebody to do something to me. So my rational mind at that point in time, I got back in the car. Once we got back in the car and I heard the door shut, I whipped out and I started shooting. I hit the dude in the back of the car. He ain't make it. The other dude tried to jump out the car and run. I chased him down 3-4 blocks. I told you I was playing football at that time, so I'm in pretty good shape. I mean, not to go back into it, but I see it in my head. I never forget I had a revolver, 6-shot 357. I hit the dude in the back of the car twice. Boom, I chased bruh down. And I was in a dark place at that point in time, too. And I never forget, while I'm chasing him, I'm not shooting. And I kept telling him, I said, bro, I'm not gonna shoot. I'm not gonna stop running. I'm not gonna stop running. You know what I mean? Because I was in a dark place. And I ended up chasing him 2-3 blocks and caught him and hit him. And he didn't die. And he told the police that I did it. And that's pretty much how that, there's no other way I can say that. Yeah. And I can't make that nice or pretty. Like, that's what ended up down. I ended up shooting him in his face, broke his jaw. He didn't die. I left, I got locked up about a month later for the crimes.
Do you think if you had killed him and caught 2 bodies, do you think you would have still been in prison?
Being as though you asked a question like that, to be honest with you, man, if I would have killed him, I don't think I would have went to prison. So I probably would have kept on living a life that way, or somebody would have ended up killing me.
Right.
I'm sure somebody would have ended up trying to kill me, but at that point, I could have made another mistake with a robbery or a drug dealing or a killing. Mm. But if I would have got away with that killing, 2 more shootings occurred after that. For the weeks that I was out, 3 more situations occurred. I had multiple joints when I went in.
Wow.
But I pled guilty to this and everything else went away based on witnesses going away. Mm. But
yeah, that would
if he would have died, I wouldn't have went to jail for that. Yeah. There's no telling what I would have went to jail for. And sadly, that wasn't the first time that had happened. Like that wasn't the first time the murder was the entree. Because we was living there. When I'm saying we, I'm talking about my little generation of guys is where I'm from. Almost all of my crew right now, that was my crew. Almost all of them are dead or still in prison, and most of us went to prison and got those sentences as a juvenile. Yeah. It's only about, from my real inner circle, it's only about 3 of us that's still alive. 1 then got on drugs, another one is paralyzed. I'm the only one that I consider have all my faculties. Yeah. If you consider that.
Think about that mature, like, silver lining that you just found there. You're like, yeah, if I had killed him, I wouldn't have gone to prison. I probably would have got bodied. Witness. I probably would have got shot to death in the street,
all my buddies ended up shot to death or in prison. Yeah. The ones that was in his life, like I got a best friend that live on my block. He gonna know who I'm talking about. He lived 1 house away from my grandmother. That's the house of the street we grew up on. He's a thorough guy. He's not a square, but he's not a bona fide crook. Mm. He never went to prison with all us. Those are the only people that survived. And what I think allowed him to survive was after me and my cousin and another one of our childhood friends on the same block. I'm talking about the block we come off. When he looked up, by the time he was 17, all of us was gone. I was in on murder. My cousin, that's like a brother that grew up in my household, was dead. Other buddy that was next door to him had been slammed on his head. His neck broke. Now he dead. He the only one that's alive and free. Wow. So when I'm saying my crew, I mean my crew in the streets, because this guy, his name AJ. I can say his name. Shout out to my man AJ. AJ gonna be like, damn. But he always tell me, he say, E, you and Markel and them, y'all ain't scared me straight. It just made me think more. He said, by the time I looked up and I was graduating high school, everybody on the block was gone. He said it reminded me of Boys in the Hood. Mm-hmm. At the end, when they flash back and everybody disappears, Doughboy, which is Ice Cube, Ricky that got shot in the back, he said life was like that for him. Like everybody just faded away and disappeared. Lo and behold, I came back in 17 years.
Yeah, right. Wow, it really was that real.
And this is 93. Like, this ain't 89, 90. This ain't Wayne Perry in them era, like 91, 92. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? This a year after that. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is when the murder capital era was simmering down, in my opinion.
It was. Even by 93, it was the
just
demand for
down.
crack was just starting to wane a little bit, but it was still, it was still violent.
at least
and hoods all over.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Wow. Okay, so how long? So you got arrested a month after the shootings.
Yeah, like a month and a half, no more than 2 months, because I ran to, I don't mean ran like that, but I shot down to Fort Lauderdale, probably about let's say 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And you were fighting your case for how long? Did you thought you might have had action? Like, did you consider taking it to trial?
Man, that's funny, I did. So I tried, I'm too smart for my own good. Even when I was younger, I thought I was so smart. So by the time I realized that homicide was on me, they was coming to get me in, I was charged as an adult. I don't know if I based this off of TV or uncles or cousins that had been to prison or my interaction with law enforcement, but I came up with an alibi. You know, I came up with what I thought was a defense. So I had a girl, we were staying at a hotel, and this was true. Even after the crime, I retreated to a hotel that I was staying at with a girl. By the time I was arrested, I thought that I would fight this case based on my alibi, and I thought that my homies was the best homies, and my homies would never break the code. They would never tell on me. And you learn so fast that is not true. Like, you learn that real fast. Like, I've been in trouble since as an adult and had co-defendants that didn't, but some of that was luck and my judgment skills after already being in bad situations. Back then, I was on some real live hood time. Like, you know, if you from my neighborhood and we together, it's all us, but that's not true. So
were there other people telling besides the victim?
I was just getting ready to say that. Now, a lot of people don't know this, and this goes into the story. I had 2 would-be co-defendants. I never spoke about this. One of these would-be co-defendants, I'm not gonna say his name, but people from my neighborhood gonna know who it is. One of these would-be co-defendants turned states. He caught a drug charge a couple weeks after I was in and knew where the murder weapon was. He retrieved the murder weapon from who he had sold it to. He sold the murder weapon to somebody and he was supposed they got rid of it. He caught a case, a distribution case, worked with the prosecutor on that case saying, look, I know the little Eyone did blase, and not only do I know he did it, I know where the weapon at. So they say, where the weapon at? He said, I sold it to Joe Blow. He took the homicide detective on my case and the prosecutor on my case to Joe Blow house and some type of way got the weapon. I was told that he told the people, look, man, they know you got the weapon. The people supposed to told him, if you give us the weapon, we won't charge you. And that's how they got it. This is how I ended up pleading guilty, so I'm really getting to something. And my lawyer got a picture of this weapon and showed me this weapon. And I lied to my lawyer at the time. I still was talking this, I didn't do this, and I got an alibi, my girl going to stamp it. Her name was Molly Armstrong. I really like this lady. This lady convinced me to plead guilty. Not in the way that people say on TV and in stories that, oh, they helped me throw my life away. What she did was, she didn't keep challenging that I was lying. She sat across the table from me in a legal visit area at D.C. jail. She had been coming to see me for weeks at this time, and she just slid a piece of paper across the table to me. And when I got the paper, I looked at the paper, it was a .357 revolver. It was a picture of it. And this was a unique weapon. Like, it's not like just a regular Glock that you see and another person got a regular Glock. It had unique things on it that I knew that it was that joint. So soon as I seen the picture, I looked back up at her just like I'm looking at you, and she said, is that your weapon? I said, nah. Just slid it back because now I'm still dealing. I had a public defender at that time. I'm dealing with them like all of y'all of the system. She said, listen, Eyone, you could tell me it's not the weapon, but I know who gave them this weapon. I know where this weapon came from. I think this is the weapon. And he said, and I think that your friend who gave them the weapon is telling on you. And he knows that you weren't at the hotel with the girl, and the police have already found the girl, and the girl said that you weren't there either. So now we got to relook at all this. So I say that to say that when I was in there fighting, and this is what I was doing, and I realized that your friends are not really your friends, the people, I said 2 potential co-defendants. And the other potential co-defendant just disappeared off into the night and never was identified. I mean, even this one that told was never identified as being a participant. He revealed that he was a participant when he began to tell on me. But the other one, me and him still friends to this day. He's still alive to this day. He didn't go to jail for the situation. And I ended up pleading guilty to second-degree murder, and they dropped the assault with intent to kill for the guy that I shot in the face.
I see.
And they dismissed all the other violent acts that I had while I was on the run, which none of those were charges to be charged. But you know, just sometimes you suspect on such and such, and then you may be charged with something as a complaint. But if you don't get if you're not indicted on it, there's no way, there's no vehicle to go to trial.
Right.
So
okay, yeah. So it could be worse. Like you didn't go there to kill anybody. You were there to rob people. Now, you know, I'll tell you what, if you were in a place like Oregon, you'd be doing all day. If you're from a honky state and you got caught, even though you went
I was in Virginia.
Yeah, right.
Across the yeah.
Right.
It'd have been the same way.
Now, when you go to trial for we'll call it a riffraff. This is not a riffraff crime. Somebody got killed, but it is a riffraff crime. It's not
right.
But it's a riffraff crime. When you go to federal court for a riffraff charge in D.C., it does the same axiom hold true that it does in most federal cases. The feds win 99% of the time, or is it different? Do you actually have action in a case against the feds when it's a riffraff crime caught in D.C.? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like, do they have the same success rate in prosecution? No. Okay, they don't.
That success ratio doesn't apply to D.C. Superior Court.
Okay, got it.
It may apply to D.C. Federal U.S. District Court across the street. And the only reason why I say I don't think it applies to Superior Court is because the U.S. Attorney's Office that prosecutes the cases in D.C. Superior Court only prosecute 65% of them, and they only convict a lower ratio than that. Wow. Reason being is that the arrest that comes, whether it be a gun charge or a murder charge, comes from D.C. police. And D.C. police have been notoriously known to violate the Fourth Amendment and all other type of pre-arrest rules.
I see.
So that's the only, it's a technicality difference that is not the same. And also, before we leave that, murder is the hardest charge to convict on. And I'm sure you know why.
Well, I think as we all saw with the Diddy case, I think sex crimes are pretty tough too.
No, I mean to convict on. Like you're saying it the opposite. I'm saying murders are the hardest charges to convict on. You said sex crimes are pretty hard too. Yeah. He got convicted of sex crime. He just didn't get convicted of RICO.
Right, but notoriously, I mean, that there was a ton of sex crimes within that RICO case that were so long ago, and witnesses, because of memory and stuff like that. Like, I just know for a fact that sex crimes, especially from the past, are very hard to prosecute. Generally, he got caught for prostitution and some. He got caught for some.
Prostitution, man, but all the shit that washed him up, he beat. He only went down on 2.
That's backs up my point. It's very hard to convict on sex crimes.
None of the other charges were the sex crimes. He didn't nobody. That wasn't the actual Jones. The RICO is not a bona fide sex crime, so I'm not even disputing this with you or debating it with you. Am I talking about it? I don't think he should have ever been charged with RICO, and if you look at all the elements of RICO, he was on RICO by himself.
I know. No, okay, so when you signed, you pled out and you got sentenced to 15 to life. Yeah. What did you think? Were people getting out with the people that had a indeterminate sentence like that, 15 to life, 20 to life? Were they getting paroled, some of them, or were they all just doing all day?
I couldn't gauge that at that time for the people who was getting that time at that point in time. Yeah. But I had done some juvenile time, and in one of my juvenile bids, they did a program that's like a Scared Straight. It's not Scared Straight, but they actually brought convicts from Lorton, because Lorton was still open, to my probation office, right? And we met guys, and I never forget this dude. I don't know his name to this day, but me and my buddies, we was sitting in the back. We not taking none of this shit serious. We don't care nothing about probation. This we waiting to get out of here. We gonna go smoke some weed real quick before we got to go back to the shelter house. We delinquents. But some type of way, you know how they say if I could just help this one dude, although I still went to prison and spent 17 years in prison, his story got me. So he was saying, I mean, he looked good and healthy. He had on jeans, because in Lorton is someplace you could wear street clothes. So he had on jeans and some Timberlands and a polo hoodie. And this is how we used to dress back then in the street. So I'm looking at him, and he talking about he had a second-degree murder conviction, and, you know, he had been in jail 11 years, and he was coming home, and he only had 15 to life. Wow. I didn't listen to nobody else, but I remembered him. And I was like, damn, he got 15 to life on a murder now. I was 15.
Yeah.
15 years was a life sentence to me back. Like I could, like 15 years. Oh my God!
When you're 16 years old, you can't comprehend.
That's you know what I mean. Like,
I'm gonna be 31 when I get out. I'm so old.
I haven't even lived that long.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stab somebody.
All right. So I remembered him, and I never forget my father used to come see me all the time. At this point in time, he used to come see me, bring me liquor, weed, like. Pops used to make sure we were straight.
When you were in jail?
When I was in jail on this beef right here. I mean, my father is proud.
Old black guys are so cool.
Oh,
Old
man.
black dads.
See, my father was a convict. Like, I met dudes when I got to prison that remembered he was bringing me pack at that time. Wow. But anyway, they offered me 20 to life at first because it was 2 shootings.
Right.
And they didn't connect the 2 shootings. I don't think they connected the 2 shooters at first because the dude who started telling was telling in a way where he was separating himself from our drug dealing. You get what I'm saying? So he was saying that me and my friend, the decedent, know little Eyone, and my friend, the decedent, sold Eyone drugs. Technically, he was lying. I called him for the drugs. You dig what I'm saying? But in the process of him saying, I don't do nothing, I don't sell drugs, that's my friend, and Eyone is the one that he was dealing with, and Eyone tried to kill both of us. You know, so that was his story regardless. So in the process of me taking a cop, I'm basically saying, all right, since he wanted to tell the story like that, I don't know who shot him. But I take the cop to the 2nd-degree murder for the homicide. And that's how I ended up doing it. It was kind of like my lawyer worked it out, like for real. If you take a cop to this, we'll drop this. And I end up getting a 15 to life for the homicide, which I was going to get for him anyway, because the 8 would carry 15 to life. That's like an attempted murder.
I see.
But I took the charge by myself, and nobody else went to jail.
But it doesn't sound like you were really thinking about paroling at the time. Like you were like, that's so far in the future, 15 years.
I ain't had no understanding on parole, right? Yeah. And let me try to go a little bit into my mindset, the psychological aspect of it. My father, who had done time, he was so upset that I kind of had got into some street shit without no guidance. Like, you know what I mean? He never wanted that for me, but once I was in it and he came home from prison, he used to try to reel me in, and I was just kind of gone, and I thought that he was on some old timer stuff, but for really wasn't. But we could get into that another time. But anyway, to make a long story short, when they kept offering me the 20 to life, it put me in a position to be defensive. Like, I ain't doing no 20 to life. If they gonna give me 20 to life, they ain't gonna give me number 30 to life in trial. Let's go to trial. So he kept saying, you right, I don't want you to do 20. So in the process of negotiating back and forth with my attorney, right, talking back and forth, she came back with a 15 to life deal. And my father kind of inspired me to jump on it based on that I still had the other charge out there, depending on what you're talking about. I was charged with murder first, so when I keep saying the other charge out there, I got the charge for shooting the witness in the face. They ended up dropping that. I think that they knew that was going to be a hard charge to convict of. You know what I mean? But I pled guilty to that. 15 to life. My father kind of inspired me to do that. And as far as when you say parole, I never thought about making parole. My real thing that I had an issue with, and I spoke to my father about it many times back then before I had to make that decision on my own, was, can I survive long enough to make parole? And that's to be honest with you.
And when you're in the feds?
Lord, the feds. The feds. I spent 7 years in Lorton and private prisons before I went to the feds, and I seen more killings in Lorton and the private prisons than I seen in the feds.
Okay, so tell us about Lorton. Tell us about the private prison system, because we haven't really had anybody in private prison, maybe one guy on this show that's told us about it, and it sounds like anarchy in there. So
go straight to the private prison?
Tell us about your journey through the first 7 years before you went to the actual federal.
Boom. First and foremost, I got charged as an adult while I was 16. In D.C. jail, they send you to a place called North 1. North 1 is the 2 top tiers of the unit, and the bottom tiers is ad seg, total separation, and special handling. So you had your Wayne Perrys, your Marcus, your Sean Branches, all these big-time dudes that got named front page of the paper type dudes, and they in there charged with banging. So we around already. I don't know why you would put juveniles around all the top killers. And I ain't talking about for the danger aspect. I'm talking about for the influential aspect. But this is who we grew up around. First time I ever seen somebody get stabbed in the eye, first time I ever seen somebody stabbed to death, that was in the Juvenile block, okay? Now, I spent about altogether 13 months up there. I tried to escape from the jail up there and whooped the police, took the keys, popped all the cells. By the time they caught us, they whooped us, they did us bad, and they sent us to Lorton. So now I'm in adult prison without a conviction. Like, that's technically illegal.
Yeah.
I'm not sentenced. I did have a conviction because I pled guilty already, but I wasn't sentenced for pleading guilty until about 90 days later. So, in Lorton, I mean, I done seen a dude get stabbed in the eye. In Lorton, I done seen a dude with his hands cuffed behind him walking down a tier, because it's a max where I was at, and the dude done stabbed him with what we basically call a harpoon. There's a broom with a knife tied to the end of it, and there's a catwalk about as far away from me as you are. Stuck him right here, pinned him to the wall all the way over there where you at. I seen him die. Lorton, I could just go through like Lorton was a killing ground. Like I never seen nothing like it, but it was organized violence, right? And that's just a few things. I mean, I got stabbed in my neck in a knife fight while I was in the GC jail. I got a big hole in my neck.
Yeah. How'd you survive that? Were you leaking pretty bad, or did they obviously miss the artery?
They did miss the artery, and to be honest, since we just talking like on some physical combat, I don't think the knife was the sharpest knife. Like, you know, a lot of these knives we see in the feds are crude. This wasn't really a real, it could have been a bone crusher, but that's not what it was.
It wasn't a banger, yeah.
Yeah, like if it was some of the that I seen in Lorton or the feds, because you did, like I've seen, listen, I'm not saying that the feds is not violent. You know that's not true. I'm just saying some of the stuff that I seen before I got to the feds ain't have on it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Now, let's get to the private prison. I was in a couple of them. I was in New Mexico. I was in Arizona. I was in the Northeast Ohio Correctional Facility, CCA.
Now, hang on for 1 sec. How long were you at Lorton before, and why did they send you to the private prisons?
All right, I was in Lorton from, I got there in August. Okay, I was in Lorton from 17 to 20 years old. In max security, that's called the wall. And the only reason I got sent out of there is because Congress came out with the Federal National Revitalization Act, where Congress changed many things pertaining to the budget and the governance of the District of Columbia. Because remember, Congress has sole authority over the District of Columbia, which is why I believe the District of Columbia will never be a state. It's in the Constitution. But when they changed this, part of that document, that law, was to close the D.C. Department of Corrections. And in the process of closing the D.C. Department of Corrections, they had to start shipping us out. And it was just my load of it was just my time to go in the summer of 1997. A day before my 20th birthday, I got sent to Youngstown, Ohio.
Were you happy to get the f out of Lorton?
I was happy to get out of the wall. I was uncertain where I would go. Keep in mind, D.C. prisoners at this time and at some of the other times in history, we are the only nomadic prisoners that have roamed the whole country on buses going to prisons and jails that some people have never heard of. Like, when I say some people, I mean myself. Like, I went to Estancia, New Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't know. Only thing I know about Mexico is Santa Fe. Like, I went to Estancia, New Mexico, and did time there.
Were you ready to bang? Like, were you ready, like, as soon as you hit the yard? Like,
in the feds?
Your whole journey, like, were you with the mess?
To be honest, I was with the shit. I mean, until I changed and started living for myself.
Yeah.
The juvenile block breeds a mentality that's the closest thing I can explain to you as a gang mentality. What I mean by that is, even in the juvenile block, in some sense of ignorance in North 1 in the juvenile block, which is still adult jail. I be mixing people up because I say juvenile. For me, I was still called the juvenile, but I was charged as an adult along with 50 other 16 and 17-year-olds that are housed in an adult jail, DC jail. Now, the left side of the tier, we call that top left. The right side of the tier, we call it top right. We got to beefing with each other in there like we were blocks and hoods. It's a mentality of the young bull. You know what I mean? So we had already got into that. So when you say, was you with the yeah, I mean, and for me, going into violent places, a lot of us, especially on the right side, we had packs, do or die packs that no matter what happened, the older dudes, that Lord, them do. Remember we had this conversation about the DC blacks? Now, I'm never gonna say we was like the old homies or the DC blacks, but some guys that came before us had those jailhouse reputations of sexual assault and different type of things like that.
I've heard that. I've heard that. Thank you for bringing that up. We've heard gruesome stories about straight up gang perpetrated by the DC blacks. From other people that have done real Fed time.
I think they lying.
Is that
true? First
and
foremost, I think they lying. And I'm not going to say that they ain't never seen nothing like that, but federal prison is not even a thing no more. Like, it's too many willing participants. Now, back in the 70s, in state joints, and
this is from the 90s that we heard this, in the early 2000s.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's not no bunch of no going on about no DC dudes or no other dudes in the feds. It's a state prison thing. Maybe back in the day it was a little bit more, but I've been in 12, 13 prisons. It's not even no big thing in the feds. Most people hold hands with boys now.
Right.
Like, you don't have, I'm not saying
that is
don't.
kind of though, like,
I'm
in
not
my
saying
opinion.
that ain't, I'm not saying that's not, but I'm saying stories that you hear from Lucasville, stories you hear from Attica, stories you hear from the Q, stories you hear from Angola, where people done threw blankets over dudes and 3-4 dudes going there and do wah. You don't, that don't happen no more. I was there. Ain't nobody throwing no blanket, not in the U.S. pen.
Right.
Ain't nobody throwing no blanket over no, if 3-4 dudes taking some little curly head, long head, light-skinned boy. That ain't happening, but they exaggerate. They lying. Damn, has it happened? I never seen it, but I heard plenty stories of not just Lorton. In the 60s and the 70s, things like this happened in all state prisons. It wasn't even a big federal thing. So these dudes that be coming home, I'm not gonna say nobody lying. I'm not gonna say nobody ain't seen this, but I can tell you from Atwater to Victorville to Hazelwood and to Beaumont, ain't no bunch of raping going on. They exaggerate. And I'm gonna just leave that there.
Does the, is there a stigma in the feds amongst the blacks, the DC blacks, about having sex offenders in their car? Like the way that like the whites and the Mexicans will run somebody off instantly if they find out they have bad
but
paperwork.
all the white boys that was on the compound with me had boys and they was prostituting. So like when dudes talk that, I don't even know where they get that from.
I'm talking about your paperwork. Talk about your paperwork.
On your paperwork?
Yeah, I'm talking about if you have bad paperwork.
Ho. If you're talking about paperwork, then that's still gonna be prison to prison. If a dude's in Beaumont and they checking, we just talking DC right now. If dudes in Beaumont checking paperwork for that, which is a serious junk, especially at the time when it was bloody Beaumont, I wouldn't care who you was if your paperwork wasn't right, you had to go in the hole. But we talking specifically about sex offenders. Yeah, you gonna go in the hole, but Petersburg is a freak joint. Why would they check your paperwork at Petersburg when Petersburg is a freak joint? Marion is a freak joint right now. Marion is not the old Marion. Marion is a sex offender joint. Do you think anybody, DC, New York, California, you think anybody checking paperwork in Marion? Anybody checking paperwork at what's the other the Petersburg too? It's a junk for freaks. And what I mean by freaks is chomos, pedophiles, all these like. So I don't want to make that example because that's clearly not what you're asking. So let's stay on the penitentiary. Most dudes that got bad paperwork in a bloody penitentiary, I ain't talking about them. I ain't gonna call Allenwood a penitentiary, but Allenwood was like a program penitentiary. It had certain dudes there, and you could get got there. But Allenwood had a strong Muslim population, a strong program population. Hazleton and Beaumont at different times they was off the chain. If we talking DC, even a DC dude paperwork gonna have to be right amongst that circle. But remember this: we could take Hazleton and Coleman for an example. You might have red side, blue side. So if all the thorough DC is on the red side, DC dudes is on the red side, who can control what's going on the blue side? And a lot of these dudes that come on podcasts and tell these stories about DC guys being robbers, and they're DC guys that are robbers. And let's get that out.
My question was, do thorough DC black cars allow dudes with bad paperwork?
No.
That's all I want.
Absolutely no. And it's only if you're talking about the thorough ones. You get it? Like a lot of people say, I've been around DC dudes, and they was in Three Rivers. Three Rivers is a dropout yard. They say, I've been around DC dudes, and DC dudes do this. They in Terry Hut. Terry Hut is a dropout yard. Don't tell me you've been around DC dudes unless you've been around the men. That's what we call them.
Right.
If you've been around a bunch of suckers, a bunch of boys, a bunch of dudes that with kids, you ain't been around no men no way, so don't be in no conversation with me.
Right. Okay. So in that sense, it's exactly similar to how the other races.
Any men, black, white, or Spanish. You dig what I'm saying?
I got you. Okay. So yeah. So you leave Lorton. Tell us.
In 97.
Tell us about the private prison experience. I think this is fascinating.
All right. So they came in the jailhouse, the cell block, 4 block. About 4, 5 o'clock one day. Now, through the newspapers and through other loads, I hate to say it like that, but that's probably how the slave ships was back in the day. They probably knew
Chattel.
that. Yeah, man, I don't want to go, but it just hit me.
Yeah.
But we knew I was on the top tier, the Rock. Sadly, I was in the same cell my father had been in 20 years prior, but 18 cell on the Rock. That's the same cell my father was in when he was there. But you could see from 4 block into 2 block across the little rec yard. 2 block top 10, bottom 10 had been emptied out. So we seen them coming in with the chains and everything. Get up, blah, blah, blah. It's real loud, real aggressive. We don't know where they going. You never know where you're going back then. So that day, I believe that was a Saturday for us, a Friday or Saturday, because I got a visit the next day. My grandmother came to see me the very next day. They lived in Ohio. They came in there and they said, bang on the door. Everybody just pack up, get naked, strip down, blase, blase. They took us to the gym and put us on a bus. Like, now, and I'm saying that in a fast way, but a whole lot of stuff was going on. This was kind of like, man, I never seen nothing like it. It reminded me of the movie Scarface when they was in that immigration part and it was just a bunch of wild stuff going on. That's how much commotion was going on. I'm 19 at the time. I'm still young. I never been nowhere else, so I don't know what to expect. And I'm actually a little apprehensive because I'd heard a bunch of Fed stories about some of the stuff me and you just talked about, right? I never seen it, so I don't know if it's an exaggeration or what. My mind all over the place is what I'm trying to tell you. First place I get to is Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. They lock us down just when we got off the bus. And then the next day they let us out for what's called orientation, right? First day in orientation, 2 dudes that had beef from Lorton and D.C. so cruddy, D.C. sent everybody that had problems with each other, they just emptied them into this joint. Like, I'm surprised more people didn't die than did die. While I was there, 2 people died and they had about 13 attempted murders. All right, but the very first day, right in front of the warden and everybody, 2 dudes that had problems from Lorton went straight to work right there as soon as I got off the bus. Now, I heard stories of that, and this was just the first time I saw it. I saw it many times after, but I never seen dudes stabbing each other in front of the administration. That was the first time I seen it. And then after I saw that, I realized that, because I got into some about 3 weeks later, but I realized that my survival or my safety was predicated upon myself. It wasn't the CO's not gonna help me, the administration not gonna help me. And I realized, Lord was vicious, but when they start sending us to places where the people didn't know how to deal with us, and what I mean deal with us, is that these people thought that even when they seen this work right here, that they could say, stop that, stop, sit down, get that. You got to bring a baton, the mace, the uniform, the turtles. Like, that's not how, I know it's a lot of men from other places, but that's not how dudes that slinging that knife gonna operate. So after that, man, another thing that I seen up there that was wild is that they didn't have any limitations or rules on how they use all these ride tactic toys. I ain't even gonna call them weapons. They had so many toys for us. The shield, it buzzed like they like I got hit ass naked coming out the shower with the electric shield, and I ain't do nothing. They was just beefing with us. What I mean by us is the DC guys. Yeah, the same people that the feds call us DC blacks. In the CCA, they wasn't calling us DC blacks. They was calling us Lorton or DC prisoners. Okay, and their beef was just that. So I got. Not just everybody who was in that unit, they dropped gas on us from the ceiling. They ended up getting hit with a lawsuit. One of our legal Eagle jailhouse lawyers filed a class action lawsuit for a lot of money. I don't know how much money it was, but even people like me, just the regular little people low down on a totem pole, got like $1,500. Now, that's not no money, but if you consider hundreds of people getting $1,500, that was a couple dollars.
They shot gas at you, or they dropped it like grenades or something? Wow.
And they hit the ground and they spin. It's so crazy. Guess what really pissed them off? They had never really dealt with no Lorton guys. Lorton guys, I don't care. Lorton guys different, man. Like, we bred different in the way in which we deal with the police. My homie started wrapping towels around their face, grabbing the joints, and it's a little slot like this that mail can come out of the bubble. And we was throwing the grenades back into the bubble. Wow. Boom, 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 all in the bubble. So for people who don't know what the bubble is, that's the command center in the middle of the unit where they control everything from. But these dumb people at this private prison built a slot in it so you could slide mail or soap or paper through it. And it was big enough to slide the grenades back through it.
Wow. You guys are like Palestinians, dude.
In that environment, that's how that was, because they was doing things that, technically, they didn't know how much gas to drop on us. Like, people could have died that day.
Well, that's the thing. Private prisons, yes, they pay the staff less because they operate for profit. So they don't have unions, they don't have the same safety regulations, because all that costs money. So these people are trying to keep their expenses as low as possible, as any business person would do. So I've also heard you can pay these guys. I've heard drugs are rampant in private prisons. I heard it's easy to flip the guards.
Well, I ain't been in one in 20 years, but I'm gonna just talk about that one. I'm not gonna speak like I got an opinion on how it is now. But from my experience in private prisons always cut corners. I think since, the bottom line is about the investor and who makes money, everything gonna get cut short. But shout out to my man Gator and Titus and all these guys that were in a private prison in Tennessee, Mason, Tennessee. They took over the whole prison, tore the prison up, got inside the bubble, so much so that they sent every D.C. prisoner out of that prison to Leavenworth, Torrey Hut, and different places. Now, this was before me. This is like the late 80s, 88, 89.
Right.
So CCA, which is why I think they treated us like they treated us when we got to Youngstown, Ohio in 97, because they had already, the dude that was the chief of security, his name was Warfield. I'll never forget this black man's name. He had been in Tennessee when my homie Gator and Rodney and Buddy Love and all these dudes took that prison over. This is in the news. Like, anybody that want, they could check this. They took the prison over in the prison ride and got into the command centers. I mean, if you're in a command center, pause for a second. If you're in a command center in any one of these prison junks, you have gotten into the nervous central system of you have taken over the prison.
You can open the doors.
Right, like a lot of times at rides, dudes take over the prison like in Attica, San Quentin, on the yard.
Right.
They were inside the bubble, which as we call it.
Run for it, guys. Bing. Yeah.
All right, so
okay, so when you were there.
When I was there, the chief of security from that prison in Mason, Tennessee was there. He was on overkill with us, which is why the shells got out. They had the taser that you could shoot, like the harpoon. Yeah. They had all type of tactical toys, man. They had things that I thought you only supposed to have, like if you getting out the black trucks and you LAPD. They had that type of stuff there. And then another thing that occurred in them private prisons, since you mentioned it and they want to cut costs, the security was so lax, like 13 dudes cut a hole in the fence and walked out. One of them got almost to Canada, like northern New York.
Wow.
CCA, Youngstown, Ohio. Wow. I never seen nothing like it.
That's wild.
I remember I had a visit coming. This is one thing that was wild to me. And I'd have been in Lorton. Lorton is a killing ground. This is not me saying this. The Washington Post documented this. I had a visit coming one Saturday. Ohio was so vicious. I cut the TV on while I'm waiting for the visit. Youngstown news come out. Now, the south side of Youngstown, Ohio, is like a black area. There's some whites there too, but it's like major black area. In the era and time when we was there, they had drug-related killings all the time. It reminded me of Southeast D.C.
Yeah.
I'm watching the news because I'm watching it, so boom, the news come on. It's been a shooting in Youngstown. They say that. The very next clip is, there's been a stabbing death and a non-fatal stabbing at Youngstown, Ohio, CCA. I said, we ain't getting no visit. Like, you'll cut the news on to get killing information from the prison.
In your own prison.
I thought that was crazy.
So you hadn't even heard of the killing in your own facility?
I seen it on the news. Like, we laying in the cell.
Holy shit.
Waiting, I'm telling my cellie, and I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for Tree. So, and my cellie waiting for my treat. Like, we like brothers. It ain't like he working me or nothing, but I'm the one that's coming off this day. So I said, bruh, she don't be lying, bruh. She say she coming. Slim dropped it off. It's there. I see she coming. It's getting too late, and we ain't getting out. So I said, man, maybe they got the joint locked down. Well, maybe they gonna call us out. Sure enough, we turn on the news, the noon news, and one of my buddies in another unit and got into it with another homie. Now, this is a prison that's only D.C. And what is a prison that's only D.C.? D.C. dudes be killing D.C. dudes. Like, a lot of these dudes tell these stories, they only seen how we behave in the feds. They never seen how D.C. dudes behave with D.C. dudes.
Right. Well, you killed a D.C. dude on the streets. Right.
That don't count. Oh, okay. Like, that homie shit don't mean nothing in the streets. Like, I hate to say it like that. It might mean something to those of us who done built a brotherhood or bond, or we had some camaraderie before or after, but in Rome, you do as the Romans do. It's every man for himself in the streets, unless something like prison or the army or sports have united you. So I did kill a dude that's from D.C. in the streets, but I didn't do that in the feds. But in Lorton, me and other D.C. dudes that had beef, fighting, stabbing, everything. Yeah. Like, that unity that everybody seems to fear so much in the feds, I think it's only by necessity, because I done seen dudes go to war together in the feds and come back to Lorton and kill each other.
Wow. Jesus. Yeah, because you have to fight somebody, I suppose. And when it's just DC dudes, hey, you're my enemy again.
You know how prison go.
Okay, so
my shoes look better than yours. I got more tobacco than you.
Did you ever get tried in there? Did you have to keep something on you for protection?
I mean, I'm a paranoid guy today. So I kept a knife. Like you got like I'm from that school of thought from DC guys where as though that you wake up before the doors open, your shoes already on, your boots already on, and you should never have to ask nobody for a weapon. Like this ain't high school. This the penitentiary.
But how do you procure something like if you just get
I was taught when I first got to prison in the Juvenile, shout out to my man Andre Brown, he taught me how to make a knife out of anything. You can put me in like them escape rooms out here that people go to and I can make a knife.
So you take something from your bunk or?
Anything you see, I done made, the first knife I ever made in jail, I made it off the border of the mirrors. They had these fake things that reflected, they call mirrors. And in some old prisons, they still there. DC jail, they don't exist because of people like myself and others. But they had these metal borders that go around this pretend mirror. If you can get another tool, and for some reason it's always there, my homie gave me an ice pick. And the ice picks were made out of the things that you push to make the sink water run. If you can get to the back of it, and I keep saying if you can always get into the mop closet, break them off. That's your first piece. You sharpen that, now you got an ice pick. Ice pick really, I seen dudes die with an ice pick, but an ice pick really just gonna keep a motherfucker off your ass. Yeah. And I'm saying that in the most gruesome way because that's how I was taught. But you could take the ice pick and the ice pick can almost turn into a screwdriver or a prying tool. So they used to have these big foam trays that they used to feed us on. These things are dangerous. I seen dudes get their heads split open with them. So I would use it like the chisel and the hammer. I take the ice pick and I use the big tray and I bang the ice pick off of these little things that are like screws that they make that you have to have special tools to turn them. So even if you acquired a screwdriver or an Allen wrench or anything like it, you still couldn't do it. But they had grooves in it for the special tool that they used. And I took the ice pick, and this was a practice. It wasn't no technology that I exclusively had. And I take the tray and you bang. It's tedious, but you know when you pop the doors the next morning, your man that's coming to see you got a knife. If you're in a situation like that, you will do this all day. And I did this for like 16 hours. Wow. And it's loud, bang, bang. And you keep in mind, you only turn it a quarter of or something every time. And I did that all the way around the whole joint. And at the end, you get 3 pieces of metal and 1 piece of metal. And I gave 2 of my homies 2 pieces of metal. I kept the big piece of metal and I began shopping it, and that was my first knife.
Wow. And that's, you said it's like that, it's like a foot long.
The one that I chose as an example to describe to you is a border of a mirror that's about 12 inches this way and 10 inches that way. So you get a 10 inch, a 10 inch, a 12 inch, and then you get a half of the part that you break. Like one of them comes up and it's gonna be blunt. You know, I seen a dude sharpen one, but as a kid, I didn't think that you could do it, but you can sharpen it.
And that's not something you carry around every day, like when you go to yard. That's just something to defend your...
That's not a banger.
That's to defend your house if somebody runs in, right?
That's a good way to say it as an adult. But as a kid, I didn't even know the difference between what you tote and what you had. Yeah, as a 25-year-old and a 30-year-old convict, I had little that was in the yard, little shit you could carry in your drawers, little you could bury. I didn't know that it was a difference. So back then, the big one was the only one I had.
Wow. You had a sword right off the jump.
Yeah. And I didn't know no difference back then. But I will tell you this. I'm not one of them jailhouse dudes who say, I was killing in it. I met dudes that got bodies 1, 2, and 3, right?
In jail?
In jail. God. And the point that I'm bringing that up, shout out to my man Freeway. He passed away, but he got an accidental murder. I don't feel as though I'm on him by saying that. He stabbed a dude one time, and I don't believe he meant to kill him. Somebody else could debate that amongst my circle, but I believe he took some shoes from a dude. The dude came to him to see him about the shoes, and in the process of him dealing with the shoes that he took, you know how some people say ain't no talking? Instead of him doing some talking, he took the shoes, he slumped. Boom, he hit him one time, but the guy died. But he killed him with a small-ass knife. And I talked to him many moons later, and I said, bruh, like, why did you take off running if it was like that? Not running like a cowboy, running to get away. He said, I don't know. He said the knife was so small that when I hit him, I felt something when it came out. I just knew it was badder than I thought. And this was his explanation. But I say all that to say that them little knives, I don't know if it's because you don't see them or they leave such a bad damage to you when they hit you. Like, those are the knives that I seen that take people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, if you hit somebody the right way.
If you hit them the wrong way sometime like he did. Like, if you stab somebody with a knife, you don't know what's gonna happen.
No.
Like, I done seen dudes, like I got a homie who I'm not gonna say his name, and he got one of them jailhouse joints. And he was convicted of it, but it was precision. Like, he specifically hit him And according to he went to trial. The prosecutor put up a diagram of a body and pointed to it and said that he had pictures of this diagram in his cell with circles around arteries.
Oh my God. He's like Bill the Butcher from
That's what the prosecutor said.
Remember Bill the Butcher from what help me out here. Escape from New York, King of New York.
King of New York?
No, that was Frank White.
No,
from
that's
Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York.
Oh, Gangs of New York.
This is a kill shot.
Yeah,
he's stabbing
he's the
pig.
butcher. Yeah.
Holy dude.
Like that. They found some type of
psychopaths
picture in his cell, and it wasn't like he circled it. It was whatever the picture came from. It had arteries. Like, this is your liver, this is your kidney, this is your heart. Like that.
How many private prisons did you go to? How long were you there in the private prison system? And by the way, tell us why you wouldn't just go straight to the feds after Lorton. Like, how do they decide? Is it based on bed space? Or
I think it's on where your number come up at, because keep in mind, D.C. had to funnel about 10,000 prisoners into the federal system. Wow. Like between 8,500 and 10,000, because you're going to always have, and I'm still on point with what you're saying, but you're going to always have about 1,800 to 2,000 guys at D.C. jail. Those guys are mostly unconvicted. They're going to have to go somewhere. Now, put that into effect with Lorton holding between 7,000 and 8,000 on a good day or a bad day, sometimes more, in 8 different prisons that's called Lorton. Lorton is a part of the D.C., what was now defunct, the D.C. Department of Corrections, the prison system part. But it was about 8 prisons. And they select you to go to prisons at that time when they was closing it based on certain, sometimes they just didn't care. If you had a bunch of time like most of us on the buses, they called us the dirty 40s. That's how we pulled up, 2 buses of 40. Now, those people, you get sent anywhere. My first stop was Colorado, then Leavenworth, and they just bouncing us around.
But why did you go to the private prisons first, even though you were sentenced to federal prison?
I wasn't sentenced to federal prison. I was sentenced to 15 to life under the custody of the U.S. Attorney General. So the U.S. Attorney General can send you anywhere. Okay. But technically, I was local, so I got sent to Lorton, which if none of these population, congressional, bureaucratic problems would not have occurred, I would have stayed in Lorton the whole time until I made parole, unless I became so unmanageable that Lorton wanted to send me to the feds.
I see. Okay. So is that eventually what happened?
No. What eventually happened is that the National Revitalization Act came out and it killed the D.C. Department of Corrections and all budgets that would pay for such. So they had to send us to the feds because technically you are sentenced to the U.S. Attorney General anytime you are convicted in D.C. in federal court or superior court. So technically, at any time they could have sent us to the feds. They just did it because they were closing Lorton and there was nowhere else to house us.
Okay, so when you went to these private prisons in New Mexico and Ohio,
we were on our way to the
technically
feds.
Lorton.
No.
Like they consider that?
No. Technically, you're already in transit for the feds.
I see. So my question was, why didn't they just shoot you straight to the feds? Why did they have to send you to these private?
They didn't shoot me straight to the feds because I got convicted of a local crime. So I supposed to stay in Lorton, but Lorton closed as
I get that. Why'd you go to the private prisons first and not the federal prisons? That's what I want to know.
All right, I went to the private prisons first because they could not take 10,000 people at one time. So for years, many people languished in private prisons.
Okay, so that basically they were just, makes total sense.
You are in the custody of the feds there. The feds had already taken control of us. Right. Technically, they already had control of us because you're sentenced to the Attorney General.
Right.
But the feds made sure that these private people were paid along the way until we got there. Like now, it's still a couple DC guys in some private place right now, but not for overcrowding, but because they've been held by this place or some type of way they might have had an immigration thing in their journey. Like, for an example, I wrote a book about a guy named Panama. I got this book called Money Ain't Everything. Panama had so much time. He had 100 and some years in D.C., a life sentence in New York. He ended up getting back on all these things, right? And that's a whole nother story. But at the end, he had to go back to Panama. But when he was released from New York, he still had to go do something like 30 days in ICE. So, there's some black people that get caught up with the ICE thing, and that was one of those situations. And some people may still be in ICE joints. ICE uses private prisons as well. Okay. So that's my point.
Got it. Okay, so the private prisons were literally just a stopover while they were waiting for space to open up in proper
federal prisons, and these private prisons receive money. All that funding comes from the feds. So, and that's
feds in D.C. depending on when, but yeah.
Right.
Even when you saying D.C., you still saying the feds because the budget come from Congress, so that's a word game.
So if you catch a case in a private prison, that's going to fall under federal jurisdiction, at least in your case, right?
Not always. I got a buddy that killed 2 dudes in that private prison in Ohio, and he got 20 years in Ohio, and Ohio was so much so that didn't want to deal with it. They let the time run together for 2 murders. He got 20 for one murder, 20 for the next murder. They let the time run together, and then they say, oh, by the way, we're going to let that 20 years run with the 20 years you doing in D.C. Just get the out of Ohio.
So don't worry about it, man. You're cool.
He about to come home now.
First degree murder?
No, he had multiple murders from D.C. when he was 17, but by the time he was 27, he killed 2 more people in prison.
That's what I mean. The prison murders, usually you get shot to death row. Like, they
not
don't,
for us.
So he's just doing concurrent time on 2
multiple
first degree murders in prison.
Like, we're not taking you to trial no more. But they looked at his paperwork and be like, man, you got forever in D.C. All right, we're going to give you 20 years. He went and killed another person, gave him 20 more years. And he didn't do it at once. Listen, he caught the body, the first one, right? Went to the hole, caught another body in the hole. Years later, he took a cop to the charge and they sent him to ADX and he been in ADX. You know what ADX is, right? Yeah. And he been in ADX for 26 years since then.
Okay,
so he technically never did a time for it.
So he could have come home, but he had to kill another cop. He had to kill another person.
I mean, I told you there's a lot of going on. They had us housed with our enemies, and this guy, he don't play. Wow. He don't play. I'm not saying he don't play because he a killer. He's a killer by survival standards. He's not a predator. Can you get it?
Sounds like he doesn't play, and that's the reason he kills. I mean, it's the justice system is
bruh.
He's not going to see this. I promise you that.
He's going to see it. He about to get out.
In Florence? He's going to get out.
He back in Virginia now, going to court.
Wow.
Listen, everybody from where I'm from and around
I got to have him on, dude. I want to talk to somebody who's been in ADX. Florence, Colorado.
I got a dude by the name of Fly. Did 50 years, 26 in Florence, Colorado, and now he's moving around. You need to talk to him. He was in Colorado, Florence for 26 years. And altogether, at one stretch, he did 50 years. But he did 26 in Florence, Colorado.
Well, look, a lot of these guys are very lucky because, and the justice system is so inconsistent. Even the American justice system, in my view, is one of the best in the world, despite all its flaws. But the sentencing, it's so inconsistent. It's so unbelievably scattered. It depends on where you are. If a place has budget, if a place like Ohio is just sick of guys from D.C., 2 bodies in prison would get you the electric chair a lot of states, but they just said, we're so tired of you being in our state. Yeah, you know what? Just finish out your 20 and get the out of here. You know, a lot of people just get so unlucky and then very lucky. It's fascinating. Okay, so this makes total sense now. You're a stopover. You know when you're in the private prisons that's sooner or later your ticket's going to get called and you got to go to the feds. Do you realize that?
In our situation, I think we all knew that.
Okay.
Maybe somebody who just get sent there from their county. We knew that the only reason we're not in Lorton no more is because Lorton is closing. Yeah. And we knew that at some point, we didn't know if it was going to be this year or the next year, we would be in the feds.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years to get to the feds.
Were you happy to finally go to the feds?
Only at the time because I spent 13 months in Sussex, Virginia. Sussex 2. Death row was in Sussex 1. And the Virginia state system where I had, like, that's the closest I can imagine to being enslaved. Like, they got black people on horses with the overseer hats to treat you worse than white people. At least when I was there.
Wow.
And they hated D.C. dudes, and I don't know if that came from the way they was trained. They might have trained them to believe that we were so bad that when we came, they treated us so bad.
Right. That's what Banky Pound, who's on here, he describes a lot of those Virginia prisons as modern day plantations.
Shout out to Banky Pound. We had many conversations where we compared. Like I knew that he had done like 30 years out there, and just on social media we was kicking it. But one day we kind of got, a little more intimate in our conversation, and I said, "Damn, Banky Pound, you did all that time out there." I said, I was in this prison and that prison and this prison. He said, "Oh, I ain't know that y'all came." He said, "Yeah, when I got to Sussex 2, He said, y'all was just leaving. And he recalled the time. And I was one of the last D.C. prisoners to leave that prison. And that's how we kind of clicked, because he was like, D.C. was, I mean, we kind of busted Joan open because they treated us so bad that by them treating us so bad, they got to do more work. By the time Virginia came, they was relaxed. They was like, all right, this Virginia. We gonna let them, like, I think we opened up the prison for them, because Bangy was like, even when y'all left, dude gave me a color TV. Like, I left 3-4 color TVs behind. You couldn't take them to the feds. And the only reason I had so many is because when my homies was leaving, they was leaving the TVs with me.
Okay, so tell us about the feds. Where'd you go first?
My first stop in the feds, well, that's kind of funny. All right, my first stop on the compound in the feds is Lee County, but that was not really my first stop in the feds, because as I was traveling through these private prisons, when they were shutting down the private prisons, they were still sending us to the feds as another holdover, like they was doing us already. So I left Arizona in 1998. My first stop was Colorado, but those stops, I don't really consider them real stops. And what I mean by that is that we stay in the hole. So, boom, I was in the hole in Colorado. Now, I do tell guys when I talk to my old timers that I've been to Leavenworth, because we stayed in, I think it's called Building 31. I forgot the name of that jump. We stayed in one of these old parts of the building, parts of the prison. But I stayed there for so long that it was like we did a bid. It was terrible. This is when Leavenworth was really, really the hot house. When you get off the bus and you go into the R&D, the R&D got a little air conditioning. As soon as you leave out of there, it touch you. When I'm saying it touch you, like you feel it, it's almost like it grabs you at the hot house in Leavenworth. So anyway, we stayed there. And then we
How so? Because it was just so violent?
No, heat.
Oh, wow.
Really heat.
Wow.
It's a different form of heat in the summer. Like the name of the prison is the hot house.
Oh.
I thought that was from some stuff like you just mentioned. Maybe it's so much drama as this. Nah, I went there in August. I've never been to, and I've been in some prisons where they had Lorton didn't have AC. The heat is intense. I don't know. It's almost like they got a boiler or something, type of something that's close to that front door. But anyway, I went to Leavenworth and I stayed in the hole in Leavenworth for a minute, and then I went to, and when I'm saying this is 2 buses of 40.
Right.
It's
all
not
DC
just
guys. From the private prisons.
Right. It's a warehouse bus.
Yeah.
And we went to Memphis, the whole bus. And from Memphis, we went to Petersburg, stayed in Petersburg for a weekend, and then we ended up in Sussex too. Why did we end up in Sussex too? Because DC was just contracted with anyone that could hold us. So Sussex 2 became our last transit. I didn't know it, but we would end up being there for 13 months waiting for placement in the feds. Right. And I didn't know that Lee County, that's the United States Penitentiary in Virginia, Big Stone Gap, Pennington Gap somewhere, almost Tennessee. It wasn't open yet, so I didn't realize. I'm probably glad that I didn't know this. We were going to stay there until the prison was open.
Wow.
Yeah, and just so happened they came to get us, and when you asked was I happy, I was so pleased to get out of this one prison, bro.
Yeah. So
like
you guys,
this prison is ran like a jail, and I had already been in prison, and anybody should be able to understand that prison was ran like a jail. You can't take a guy out of prison where he's already learning, working, programming, exercising, and then put him in a jail.
So you guys opened up Lee Prison.
Lee County, yeah.
Okay,
I would say that, and that's how we say it in the feds. We opened it up. Like when I say we opened it up, there were no fences there when we got there. There were no metal detectors.
So does
in
it
a penitentiary.
Smells like new. Smells like new paint.
Yeah, and it's way out in the hills, like they blew the mountain up and made a gap.
Right.
And it's nothing but grass and pine. That's all you smell. And like we couldn't even listen to no music for months. We was just listening to mountain music. We couldn't even get a radio station out there.
So was that a USP?
That's a penitentiary, USP.
And how do they house you with no fences and no metal detectors?
When I say that, maybe I'm talking fast again. There's walls and gun towers. That's what the penitentiary is. But now they have built fences and sections inside penitentiaries to further control the population.
Of course.
So don't get too much of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the control fences.
I got you.
You don't need no fences around a penitentiary because they built with walls.
Right. Okay.
And barbed wire.
How long were you there, and what was opening a prison like?
Ah, that's a good question. That's the first prison I ever. Well, Youngstown we opened it, but that don't. That was a big mistake. So I don't think that fall in the context of what we said. The first prison that I opened would have been Lee County. What comes with that? In the feds is a little different because even though it's a new joint, you know, when the feds open up a new prison, they send workers, COs and wardens and administrators from other places. So they're not really slacking like the Youngstown place was. They hired people straight from Youngstown that ain't know nothing and had a couple people over them training them. Didn't know how to deal with us. But in Lee County, what I learned there was that first and foremost, whoever gets to a prison first is their yard. I learned that. I'm not gonna say I learned it the hard way. I learned it hands-on because, and whoever get to a prison first pretty much run the yard if they can control the yard. They send about 600 DC dudes there for about a year. It was like Lorton.
Imagine 600 DC. I would be so scared. And I'm not racist, but I'd be like, that's a lot of black people.
See, you still got some stereotypes in your head.
Of course I do. Yeah. I'm old school.
Right, but if you met me on
no,
the compound,
obviously,
and we'd have been cool, then my friends would have been cool and blah, blah, blah. But go ahead.
Okay, so, and as you said, it was like Lorton. It was, that's why they say opening up a prison is the most dangerous.
When I say like Lorton, we were beefing with each other.
Right.
Anytime you put DC dudes together, in a big number like that, it's gonna be infighting.
Right.
I don't know why I can't explain it away, and that's just one thing. But another thing that I learned being there is that, and I learned this in Ohio, when you the first people at the prison, you got to get all the metal.
You got to get all the knives.
All the potential, you get them first. Like at first, I didn't understand it. An old timer had to him. He said, if you don't get it, somebody else get it.
Right.
So that's one thing that we did. And another thing about opening a prison is that I learned that you can kinda, if you got convicts around. I ain't talking about convicts like what I was at that time. I was just a 25-year-old learning, feeling my way. Now keep in mind, me at 25 is different than your average 20. At 25, I've been in jail 9 years. Yeah. I'm a different 25. Yeah. But you got real convicts there and law library people, and they saying, listen, y'all focus on the drugs and the weapons. We need law books. We need to, like, they focus on some of the more important things. That's why I really had, myself, I got a lot of respect for the older homies that came before me. I mean, that's how I actually created my platform, DC Blacks, to respect those guys and to throw them a bone back in the joint because people forgot about them. But nevertheless, those guys got certain classes, Arabic, English, Law 101, things that I would have never, at 25, I didn't care about it. And I didn't go to trial. So I didn't even realize that the law was important to me until about that time. Like, I got out of jail, which I'm sure we're going to get into that, from bumping into these old, damn, that's crazy, from bumping into these old guys at the law library.
Okay. Was it wild to, now you're in the feds, to be around such strict racial segregation? Like, I'm sure you saw the Spanish guys, the Mexican guys come in, and I'm sure you saw the white guys come in. Was that pretty, like, eye-opening to see, like, the discipline and the kind of strict rules around race that exist in federal prison?
I like that question. I had never been around it. So we misunderstand it a lot. And I think for real, a lot of times DC guys and other guys just never get to know each other because we get off on a bad foot because we had cultural clashes. Like a man like you, right? Not at this age neither, but at a younger age, just a white man could walk in and I'm gonna automatically see you as either opposition
or administration.
Opposition or lick. Either way, I could be wrong either way. Right. But in our head, I ain't talking about your bona fide man from DC that went to the feds from the jail. I'm talking about dudes that have been poisoned and contaminated or corrupted by the Lorton experience. A Lorton person is a person that, if you're not their buddy, you don't want a DC guy don't want a Lorton guy around. That's the problem when a lot of these dudes come on these platforms and talk to people and they say DC, DC, DC. They really should say Lorton and Fed. Those two totally different monsters. Your Lorton guy is your guy that all the people say the bad things about DC. Most of those guys are Lorton guys. Right. But anyway.
So with this, like, you can be killed by your own people when you're rolling with the whites for getting drunk and calling a black guy the N-word or something like that.
Hold on, you mean somebody other than
Hang
us?
on. My question is, the DC Blacks, very disorganized, very for yourself in a way, even though, you roll with a car of men. But when you're in the federal prisons, you have to learn rules of etiquette and discipline in order to avoid race riots. That's why you see this, the Mexicans and the whites disciplining themselves is a lot of times is to avoid kicking up dust with other races. It's to keep order. Did you guys have to learn that? Like, did you guys have to really learn and organize yourselves?
No, I don't agree with that. Those groups that you just mentioned, they are organized gangs. They got rules and structure even if they making. We don't have that. Right. So the only thing that's going to be order, code, or structure is what we know. So what we know, you don't tell. If we together, if one go, we all go. We got basic rules.
Right.
As far as what you said to not get into racial, I can dig that. I would say that's truthful for other people, but for DC guys, remember, it's prison to prison, case to case, group to group, right? You don't want to get into it with nobody. It don't matter if it's race. We don't want to get into it with Florida because little homie over here stealing. You over here stealing, but we getting tens of thousands of dollars selling Joan and tobacco. So we gonna check you when I'm saying we as the group. But however, DC got so much every man for itself. If that one dude that's into that is sterile enough to say, hey, I don't need to be with the pack. I'm a lone wolf. Then that's how DC guys get a lot of bad beats because we got a lot of lone wolves because if he thorough enough to stand on his own, guess what? He can. And I mean, I can mention 20, 30 dudes right now that are what we call renegades. Now, they not renegades because they rats or they renegades because they came from Lorton, and in Lorton, they was their own man. So we got a lot of these type of situations that other people can't explain.
Well, did you guys then get into problems with the other races when you were at a place like, say, the prison you opened, Lee County?
When I was there, nobody. It was too many of us. They didn't know. Like, if it's 600, maybe 50 is with the I'm telling you, man, like you really like, the numbers may not be exact, but I'm telling you when I was there and we could use that as an example, out of 600 people, I didn't know 600 people.
Right.
You understand? But for sure, I knew at least 100, 150 from Lorton. I knew them. Now, some of the guys that came there when I was there after 2000, that came from DC jail, that never been to Lorton, never been to the feds, they like a fish.
Yeah.
Technically, like, I don't even know him. Now, you from, like, for an example, I'm thinking about a guy that's from my neighborhood. So I knew him as a kid, but I didn't know him as an adult. And now you here, and now I'm saying, yo, you from my real neighborhood. Like, me and you really homies. I want you to behave like this. Not for me, but I'm saying in order for you to be cool with me and the whole car, I don't want you stealing. I don't want you on drugs. I don't want you with boys, because I don't want that to bother us and we're gonna have to get into something. So whatever you into, keep it like this so we don't have no problems. That's what I used to do for people who was from my specific neighborhood.
Right.
That term homie is, you could flex it.
Yeah.
But my real homie from my real block, I'm their older homie. And that was sad because I was so young, but that's how things had changed by that time. Now the overall, it was guys that were older than me that I looked up to when I was in Lorton, and they taught me. And now that we in the feds, they still had certain type of rank and pull. And those were the guys that I kept it cool with. Like, I fought a dude from Washington, D.C. in Lee County. That's how many, it was just too many of us. I actually like being in prisons, not being in prison. I actually had a better time when there were less people from where I'm from. I had less trouble, I had less, and we really had to depend on one another when I was in places. Like, I done been in a joint where it was only 45 of us. That's almost unheard of today. But I was in a far out prison in Florence, Arizona, too. That same prison, I was there, and it might have been 145 of us, but there was 900 Mexicans. So I didn't be like, people always say, oh, there's so many, they got the numbers. I can sit here and tell you 5, 6 prisons I was in where we did not have the numbers, and we behaved the same, bro.
What was the worst prison? What was the hardest place to bid?
Physically? Oh, no, you say to bid.
Yeah, I mean, in the feds, in your experience.
In the feds?
Yeah, in your experience.
Okay. I mean, the feds wasn't no problem for me though at all, even being wise. But just trying to answer the question, I'ma say this FCI called Gilmer for me, because you said in your experience. And the only reason I say that is because I just left the penitentiary. The respect, no exaggeration, the respect in the penitentiaries is out of this world.
Yeah.
Now the disrespect is out of this world too, but I'm only talking about the respect. They the cleanest places. Like the floor spick and span. In the morning it's quiet. At the nighttime sometimes, I ain't talking about in the hole, the hole is a zoo. But they ain't gonna touch the TV. The microwave gonna be clean. If somebody spill food or coffee, they gonna get it up in some of these places where I've been, right? So when I got to the FCI, at Gilmer, West Virginia. Bus in front of the line at the microwave. I had never seen that. Motherfucker say bitch ass boy on the football field in the basketball court, and these are friends.
Wow.
Now, not the whole prison. I'm just giving you an example of different things I've seen. And I can stop there. That was hard for me because I got there after I'd been in prison for 9 years. I only did 17 years. Once you get to 9 years mark and you only got 15 of life, you technically think that you're at single digits because a lot of people don't consider the back number. So for me, that was real trying because not only do I not like direct disrespect, indirect disrespect irritates me.
Sure.
So even when I'm sitting at the TV and over here, they all bitch ass suck my it's bothering me. Yeah. The Spanish guys over here watching TV, this stupid guy right here that just came to jail go turn their TV. I know the Spanish boys about to punish him. We about to be locked down. Like, it's you just seeing too much. So for me, it was when I stepped down in security level when I went to this particular prison. But there were also good things that happened for me there, which is why it was hard to answer the question because I was able to kind of grow out of the homie mindset. The homie mindset is what they call DC blacks. Mm-hmm. I was able to kind of grow out of that because the homies that was coming in wasn't on homie time. So I started to say, you know what? I'm only dealing with these young dudes right here that I know. I'm only dealing with these old timers over here that I know from the feds. And I'm only dealing with the Muslims because I was Muslim at the time. And that's what really allowed me to get into my own and, you know, focus on myself and writing. Not just to attribute it to a one religion, but to get into my spiritual self.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Helped a lot of people in prison. Were you hustling in there?
All the time.
What was your hustle? What was a good
At different
hustle?
times, I had a couple different hustles. My best hustle ever probably was tobacco when the feds killed tobacco, but I done also sold blow. I didn't even sell junk. When I say Joan or down, I'm always talking about dope. I'm not one of them dudes that say dope for everything. If I say dope, I'm talking about opioids. Heroin, no doubt. If I'm saying up, I'm talking about white girl. That's what I mean when I say it. So sometimes I just do it interchangeable. But I never sold dope when I was a kid on the streets. Right. And a lot of people don't notice it was because of my mother's situation. Like it was just a no-no for me. Yeah. But in prison, it was so profitable. Man, I never seen nothing like it. Like a match head might get you $50 or $100. Like I heard somebody on one of your shows saying that they was selling something like 3 grams for $1,000. Yeah. Bro, I used to get $1,600 for a gram when I got down to the FCI level. Like, and I wasn't even going up. For people who don't know, I wasn't bringing it in myself. I had a homie that had a move, and out of love or loyalty or something, if he go up and he come off good, he will break me off 4 or 5 of them. So I'm making $1,500. Listen, I could sell one for $800 then. Like those numbers that I heard, I was like, damn, they must have been at a prison where they had a lot of it. Yeah. You know, when you at a prison and you have a little tobacco or a little this or that, it goes
Price
way
is
up.
Gonna be insane. Yeah.
I don't care what nobody say. Once I realized that my homies and my dudes was the only ones that had it, I ain't play no games with the number.
$1,600 for a match head. That's half.
No, not for the match head, for the whole gram.
Okay,
$50 for the match head.
Right, but that's 1 gram, $1,600 wholesale. You can, a match head.
$1,600 was, if I break it down, $800 was wholesale.
That's $800 wholesale. So you're doubling your money.
At my time, right.
Selling, a match head's like half the size of my pinky.
Yeah, really smaller than that.
Holy dude.
Really smaller than that.
And were you selling it to everybody or just the black guys?
Nah, to be honest with you, I can't even make a blanket statement like I was selling to everybody. Everything I did that was breaking the law by way of hustling in jail, I did it with a chessboard type of strategy. And what I mean by that is that if I was the one, and I never did this at the FCI, I did this when I was at the prison. If I was the one that went to get it out the visiting hall, I never sold it. Nobody ever knew nothing about me. Right. So even in the penitentiary, when I did hustle a little bit with junk, I never hand-to-hand anything. Right. It always went to a nieta or back then it would go to a Puerto Rican or a Dominican because a lot of people don't know that in Northwest DC you got everything. El Salvador, DR, we got everything. So I would have homies that were Puerto Rican or Dominican and people wouldn't know it. Not DC guys, I mean other dudes on the compound. So I say that in the penitentiary, the only thing I ever sold out in the open was tobacco because I wanted to be seen doing that. I would never do it. But when I was in the FCI and we put this other scheme together, and of course I'm not going all the way into the detail, another partner went up and got it. If he went up and got it, then I would send it to another race, mostly to the white boys.
Right.
The white dudes, once they got it, nobody ever thinks that it's me anyway because I didn't even get visits then. At the end of my bid, I never went in the visit hall and touched nothing.
Right.
Like, when you get parole on a life sentence and you're a DC guy, you got to stay in a prison until the date comes. So I wouldn't care if it was $2 or $2 million, it wasn't gonna be worth my freedom.
Yeah.
So that's how I did it. And now when you say did I sell it to black guys, whether they was from DC or Delaware, when it made a difference, I didn't have no type of hang up that like I won't serve a black guy or I won't serve a white guy. That was never my issue.
You just give it to somebody who would sell it.
Somebody else was gonna do it. And then too many, for real, this gonna sound funny to people who don't understand it, but too many of my friends use heroin for me to really outright sell it without creating no type of problem.
Yeah, they're gonna want freebies.
That's all that, I mean, and then, you'll lose friendships from the same. So like, I done been in a situation where I done seen homeboys that I deal with that's on it come in the unit and get it from a Spanish guy and don't know that I got it.
Wow.
Now, and of course, I didn't do that all the time. I don't want to, but that was one of the ways.
Were a lot of the black guys from DC on heroin? In prison?
Lorton that. Like, this new era, no. Like, when I'm saying new era, like, you got
we're talking about your era, dude. We're talking about your experience.
My era, I ain't never messed with dope, but dope is the drug of the Lorton guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Weed was always my thing, and all my buddies, we did weed, but Lorton guys going back to the 70s, 80s, and up, heroin was the drug of choice. I mean, that's what my father and them was on. That's what my uncles and them was on. Most of the jailhouse legends that's from Lorton were on junk. Wow. That's no secret. Ain't no shame in that game.
What about blow? You said like you had some coke in there? I didn't know
No,
anybody.
not me. No.
I didn't know anybody sold coke in prison.
I never sold coke. Now in Lorton, I sold crack before. Reason being is that when my father came down, my father, when he wasn't on drugs, on heroin, right? I never wanted to send him around heroin. So the only drugs I got in Lorton was weed or crack.
How do people smoke crack in prison?
The same way they do back in the days with the people with the tin cans and the straw.
Wow.
Like they will make a pipe. I mean, you
wild.
never seen, when you was in, you never seen the dudes that make the weed bong out the teddy bear bottle?
Yeah, that's true. I did.
All right, the same way they make the weed bong.
Sure.
For people who don't know, it's a honey bear bottle, and you could burn a hole in the tip and put an ink pen in it, put some aluminum foil. It's the same thing as the makeshift crack pipe, for real. It's just that the little foil that you sit at the top for the dish is a little deeper.
It's a good point.
So I had the honey bear bottle. Like the police, every time they come in my cell, I got a honey bear bottle, little honey, little water, and it smelled like weed every time. In Lorton.
So there were cats in Lorton that were smoking crack like that and then blowing it into the toilet, blowing the smoke into the toilet.
In Lorton, you ain't got to hide nothing.
Wow,
it could be count time, and they'll blow that shit in there. Now, not everywhere. I don't want to exaggerate, right? But I'm telling you, don't nobody hide nothing. If Lorton was in existence when they created the ban on tobacco, when you come on the T in Lorton, especially in the wall, you would smell tobacco.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like in DC jail right now, there's supposed to be no smoking. The first thing you smell in DC jail is K2 and tobacco.
Wow.
Now, and I can give you that. That's a fact. That's not me talking about no secret. The Washington Post know that.
It's wild. So you could smell crack smoke sometimes back in the day at Lorton.
In Lorton,
that's
I ain't
sweet
gonna lie to
crack.
You know the aroma. Yeah. And it's crazy that you said that because I went to a hotel in Norfolk, Virginia on a visit. And when I first walked in there, I smelled that. And my girl said, man, that's coke. I said, man, nah, that's rocks, man. We out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's nothing like that smell. Like, I know that smells from a kid.
So you were making money in there at times.
At times.
Yeah, it depends on what facility you're at and can you get it in.
But even though I'm saying at times it's true, but every prison I went in, I had to find a hustle.
And you found one.
And I found one.
Tell us about the tobacco.
The feds created the market for tobacco because they banned it.
Yeah.
And when they first banned it, I didn't pay no attention because I don't smoke tobacco. Like my buddies, it was every day. They running. I said, bro, like y'all acting like that shit is drugs. And at the time, I didn't realize that the addiction is just as strong. So anyway, to get to the point is, I was trying to get out the penitentiary, and one of my buddies, his only play was dope, right? And he traded me 1 gram of dope for, I want to say 3-4 packs of tobacco, right? But the tobacco was costing $1,200 at this time if you had the whole bugler pack. Yeah. Like some of my buddies that had so much of it, when it came down and the prices changed, it got down to $600. But at the first time, when all the dirty white boys, and I'm mentioning them by name because I was cool with the dirty white boys in this prison, the dirty white boys was putting it up. Like they knew that the ban was coming. Wow. I don't know about federal prison wide, so but in my prison,
they were stashing it, waiting for the ban to come, so that the price would.
Listen, these guys was on their. So I this how I got on it because you asked me a question. How did I get it? So this one white guy named Jason, we ended up falling. I didn't fall out with him, but the blacks and Jason fell out, and he was one of the white dudes, man. Like when I get credit where credit is due. He was one of them. Like them white guys that had that Native American in them. You know what I mean? Like he with knives and sharp. He excelled. Like he wasn't the regular white. Even though he was with the dirty white boys, he went out with the Native Americans and did their thing. Like he was like a Leonard Peltier type of guy. Anyway, he was vicious, but nevertheless, he had a spot that was one of my man's spots before he got it. And what I mean by that, it was a black guy that had a stash spot in the back of the TIG. When he left, Jason took the spot. So it was his spot, but I knew that it was there. It was almost like a secret between me and him. Like if something happened, I know you the only one to know that I know. And that was like unspoken. But nevertheless, I seen him putting the bags up, and I thought he was just stashing his bags for some reason. But the tobacco wasn't illegal. So I'm always thinking. So in my mind, after I seen this a couple times, bro, I said, bro, why the f you keep stashing the bugler? He said, man, I don't tell nobody I told you this, but the administration told us they about to ban it all the way in the whole system. And as soon as he told me that, like I always with him from that point on, every week I bought the max of the tobacco.
And then you just guys were just putting it away.
And then when it came down, shout out to the dirty white boys.
That's amazing.
And when it came down, I never forget it. The first pack I sold was $1,200.
$1,200. And do you sell them in sticks, or you just sold it wholesale to somebody else?
I sold the pack of bugler.
Right. The pack of bugler that you used to buy for what?
$1.50 or something like that. $1.50. Like I don't even know what the markup.
$1.50?
No more than $2-3.
And now it's $1,200.
It might have been more. My man said that at this place called Wagon Hut, he said he was selling his joints for $2,000.
Holy.
The whole pack. I don't know how many roll-ups is in a pack of bugler. I don't even know if that's still the hustle no more. Like they had started smoking chew before I left. Like the police was spitting on the ground, and lesser guys. Remember I said that everybody's not on the same lesser. Like none of my buddies.
Right.
Well, not back then. Nowadays, tobacco is so rare to find that even some regular guys might be smoking chew now, but I'm only talking about the ones that were smoking the spit off the ground. But you know, some guys was buying chew. I don't know if you hip to this, but some guys was buying the chew tobacco. And you talking about smell, when you talking about somebody smoking crack.
Oh boy.
They would take the chew out the thing and put it in the microwave. Like we got so many problems when I was in this one prison with that the administration had to give us a separate microwave. Because even though they couldn't make that, it was a rule that you weren't supposed to do it. They couldn't make the people stop, and somebody was gonna get hurt for the dude trying to cook his food after the dude to put the chew in the microwave. Wow. You ever seen that?
No.
Yeah, that's a terrible situation.
So you started bubbling off the tobacco, and then how did you, after the stash that you guys put away when it was legal, after that ran out, did you have a guard bringing it in?
Not me, but the dirty white boys at this one particular spot out there. I'm not even. I mean, although that ain't nothing. I just trying to be careful what I'm saying. they had to be getting it from the law.
Of course. Well,
so let me not say that, but
of
me
course
and you
they
talking,
did, dude.
but they had.
Of course they did.
Yeah, like
and the
they
guards,
was getting brand new, like it was no more bugler there, and they was getting the bugler still in the pack, so they had to have an outside connect. But what the dirty white boy who I'm talking about is not the one that I was talking about earlier. The one that I used to do favors for, even though the going rate on the compound at that time was something like $600-700. I want to say $800 for the pack wholesale. He still would let me get a pack for $300 from the times that I got him. But don't forget that the blacks had the junk dope.
So you were trading?
Sometimes, like we not the best of friends, but I'm a good dude that's of the blacks to be cool with because I can still get downtown.
Wow. Downtown.
Yeah.
Downtown's what you call heroin?
Yeah, that's downtown.
So the blacks tended to have heroin.
And the Puerto Ricans
and the Puerto Ricans definitely.
At that particular prison.
Where was that? What
That's
prison?
Lee County. We talking about the penitentiary, yeah.
And then the whites tended to have the tobacco. That's fascinating.
As far as what I know, but the whites at that prison was so secretive, they could have had anything because if you really wasn't into buying it, you wouldn't really know. Like the white guy, I don't know what they doing now or later. I'm talking about when I was there, they wouldn't serve anybody anything, which is probably how they were able to stay off the radar.
Get away from
like even the one dude that I knew that I keep telling you about, I was only in close quarters with him because I was in a program unit. I was in J-Code. So J-Code is a program unit. If you in there and you can stay low key, right? Nobody even know what you're doing. It's almost like you in a gated community and everybody else in the projects. So dudes that was jamming when I was at that particular joint, I don't know what they was doing down in the middle court because I came from the middle court. I came out of this joint called F Block, and that joint was terrible. But anyway, I went to J Block, and in J Block, which was J Code, you can hide under the perception that you're just there for the program privileges. But when I was at that point, the most money was in that block for some reason. You know what I mean? But we also had some big timers, like big Italian guys, big Puerto Rican guys that didn't really have the pull to get things, but they had the fund, the resources to get them. So I made friends with some of those guys too. Keep in mind, by the time I got to that prison, I had been in prison for 9 years. But even though we all the way on the other end of Virginia, D.C. is still closer to us than New York or Atlanta. Like with some of these guys, even Philly, like a lot of the Puerto Rican guys I dealt with at that prison were from Philly.
Okay, so what year did you realize, I think I can make parole? Like, I think I can get out of here.
Man, that's crazy. I know exactly what year. It was like 98, 99. I got to the 9-year, almost to the 10-year mark, right?
And remember, everybody, there is no parole in the feds. You do 85% of your time if you have an out date. The only exception, of course, is being from D.C. when you get sentenced in the D.C. Superior Court and you have a date like you had, which is 15 to life. That means you go before the board at 15. It's like a state case. It's like a sentencing of a state, but you're in the feds. So this is fascinating.
Well, unless you're a guy like a Leonard Peltier, one of those guys that was in before 1986, Leonard Peltier might have got a 72, 73 case, and he had life. However, he's seen the parole board maybe 5 times.
Yeah, and they're not going to let him out.
Parole board after 15 years in life or something, but Biden wanted them just pardon him. Somebody just pardoned him, he just got out.
Yeah, he did just get out. That's right. But you're right. If you went in before, if you're one of the old timers where there was parole still, you could still have a chance of parole. Most people don't even remember that though. Right.
I ain't think about it until you just mentioned the 85% because the 85% is what you do on that one number.
That's right.
But what you said is correct. My time, that 15 to lifetime, would be like a state time. And the feds even treated us like that. Certain things, if you had 2 numbers, you couldn't get the residential drug program sometimes. You couldn't get to certain programs depending on where they were with that number. They never treat you like your front number. Like in Lorton, I was treated like a 15-year dude.
Right.
In the feds, they treated me with 15 to life just like they treated the life guys.
So you were treated like a lifer. How was that different? Were you treated with more respect because you had the life number?
Oh, I wasn't looking at it from a respect part. But
how were you? How was it different? How was treatment different?
Because a dude with a regular life sentence, right? He automatically know that unless certain things happen with his classification numbers, he's never going to a medium or a low or a camp. They never considered me low in camp. We ain't never talked about that because I had the elbow. But they wouldn't even consider me for a FCI with the elbow on the back and the Lorton attempted escape, stabbing, drugs. They didn't even consider me. I met dudes when I got to the FCI that had life and started in the FCI, which is medium.
Right.
So that's one way that it's different. But I didn't really care about the programming part, but I met buddies that didn't have, because I had a violent charge. With a violent charge, you're not going to get a lot of programs anyway, no matter what. But some of my buddies that had drug dealing charges, didn't have violent charges, just because they got so much time out of D.C. Superior Court, they couldn't even go get the residential drug thing, and a part of their release was that they must get it. Now, this only happens to D.C. This don't happen to nobody else because of the Superior Court numbers. Them Superior Court numbers sometimes be higher than federal court numbers for worse charges.
Right. But you had, nevertheless, you're about to go before the parole board. Did you have any tickets or anything? Any hole shots? Any bad behavior that was documented in prison?
Not at the federal level at that time. I got caught with 200 books of stamps. That's not. I mean, it sounds like a lot for a regular, but in court and dudes is getting money. That's not even a lot.
Right.
That's one sale of stamps. Like I know dudes that might sell 200-300 stamps in a day.
Right.
So even in my mind, when I caught the shot, it was a 300 series shot. For people who don't know, that's almost the low. They might got a 400 in the feds. I don't know, but the 300 series is the lowest that I even know. They might got some lower than that, but that is the lowest type of, like that's the misdemeanor of misdemeanors, a 300 shot.
Right.
I mean, a stabbing is a 100 series for people who don't know.
So you had a stabbing charge, but in Lorton.
I had a stabbing in Lorton, attempted escape in Lorton, arson in Lorton.
Why? But did that, first of all, what happened with the arson?
All right, Lorton is an old penitentiary. For people who don't know, in old penitentiaries, there are certain levels of civil disobedience. We call it demonstrating. So you can flood or you can burn when you got a beef with the police. They passed out new sheets. I didn't get any new sheets that day on a new sheet day. You might bang on your door for the police to come on the top tier on a rock all the way in the back. The only way to get the police attention back then is to bang on your door, which makes a loud, irritating noise and bothers everybody in the unit, or you gotta wait the detail come out for them to go do it. Police was, I was 16, 17. He was one of the police that if you wasn't somebody in prison already, he didn't respect you. He kept saying, wait. I told him, I said, bruh, if I don't get no sheets before 4 o'clock, you're gonna be writing before you go home. As it got close to 4 o'clock, he was still trying to get my sheets. I flooded. He thought the flood wasn't nothing. Now you can get detail to pick it up. So when he let the detail out to clean up the water, I said, all right, you think the flood ain't nothing? I got some newspaper in here. I lit all the newspaper on fire, lit the mattress on fire. You gotta open the door to come put the fire out. And that's how I got an arson.
Dude. Yeah, it does remind me of the first scene of Scarface.
That's a state prison thing, though.
Yeah,
like I never seen burning in the feds unless it's a riot.
And then the stabbing. What happened with the stabbing? Where you caught the ticket there?
Oh, that's not the DC jail shit. The DC jail shit was the shit where we was in groups. But and this stabbing in Lorton, this was some minor shit. And matter of fact, they only gave me a 200 series shot because when the police wrote the shot up, they said that the other person had the knife. Technically, he only got stuck because we was wrestling for the knife. This wasn't even a real stabbing, but I had the shot for it. But some type of way they made it a 200 series. In Lorton, we call it on the face, we call it I forgot what we call it, but it's still like the 100, 200, it's still the same thing. And it was his knife, so I only got a 200 series shot for that. Like I didn't even get sent out the unit I was into another unit, but that was one of the charges.
And so when you go to the parole board all these years later in the feds, did they even see that?
That's what I was just getting ready to say. It was only some shots that they saw.
Okay.
And I think that had something to do with records that were lost from DC to the feds. Like by the time I got to the feds and to the parole board, they may have only had 3 or 4 shots in there. I seen some of my paperwork. They had some disorderly conducts in there, but they were copies of something that must have went to somewhere else because it wasn't in my jacket. Like you see your jacket in some places. This was something that the parole board had like somebody had sent it to them electronically. I didn't even remember some of them. I only remember the arson because I had to file to the courts to get it off. Technically, it's not arson. In Lorton, it's called burning demonstration. Like, I didn't set a building on fire, but the United States Parole Commission said, we don't care what Lorton said. That's arson to us. I had to file to the courts to get that taken off. And I did. I was successful. I got a 44-month reduction for that.
Wow.
I mean, this gets into part of how I got out of prison.
Okay,
because
so go
I started
into it.
litigating.
Okay, got it. So let's, I want to save that actually because it's going to take too much time. We've been going. Okay, so you did 17. You had 15 was your minimum. How many times did you have to go before the board before they gave you parole?
It's funny. I only went before the board one time.
Okay, so you just didn't make it. You just had to wait to do 17.
How was that possible, though?
I went in front of the board at 11.
Okay.
Like 11 and 6, 12, let's say 12 years, like 11, 8 months, right? Which was my time that I was supposed to see him. And in all actuality, it's a time that I thought I was gonna get out. I only took that cop when me and my father was debating, man, you shot too, like, bro, you gonna do some time. And he kind of convinced me that the 15 to life was fair. I don't know what word we use, but we gonna say fair.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so in my head, I only did it because he kept saying, Shorty, you 17. In 11 years, you're gonna be 28. He said, you're gonna be almost my age. Like, he sold it to me. Like, he didn't want me to get the dub or more. And I started buying it. Like, it took 2-3 weeks for him to convince me. And I started telling myself, 28, 29, all right, that ain't bad. And I thought that if I could just go to jail and do the time that I could get out, but that was far from the truth. So the first time I went up, I got a 60-month hit. That's a 5-year hit. And I didn't give up, though. I thought I was gonna be all out of shape, but I was really practicing Islam to a point where as though like I stopped hustling, stopped smoking weed. I never drank in jail anyway. I didn't like made up but weed. And I said I never drank. D.C. jail, I drank real liquor because my father used to bring me Bacardi, but I didn't drink hooch.
Yeah.
Like, that's not my thing. Like, I just ain't like, and my cellar used to make it, and when you see the dudes make it, it kind of
turns you off.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, so I got the 5-year hit, and what I did when I got the 5-year hit, I immediately started going to the law library because I felt like the 5-year hit was unjust. And it was wrong.
5-year hit means what?
That means that you got to do 5 more years before you come up for consideration for parole again, which is outrageous. Because keep in mind, for them to sit down and tell me to do 60 more months for a fire I started at 17 years old, when you got people that's coming in right now on brand new charges from a court building that don't got 5 years to do. Like, it was dudes that was coming in with gun charges that had 36 months. And you telling me I got to do 5 whole more years for a freaking 5 when the people was wrong?
Right.
But
yeah, it's brutal.
That's what I did. I started reading people's cases, and then I realized that even if you was in a post-conviction state like me, a lot of times I didn't study law because I pled guilty. I thought that once you plead guilty that everything is over.
That was it.
That's far from the truth. Like, you can always litigate. Like, I even tried to take my cop back based on ignorance of my age at the time. And I don't know, maybe I didn't have enough time to succeed in it, but I found case laws where dudes did, but I didn't succeed. So what I did was I kind of operated on that focus on what you can change right now. And the only thing that I could change at that time was the parole hit. I had 15 to life. They killed the D.C. parole board when they killed the D.C. Department of Corrections. And the United States Parole Commission said, no matter what your charge is, if you have a killing of any sort, second-degree murder, manslaughter, first-degree murder, premeditated murder, we want you to do at least 20-some years. For me, the number came out to be 263 months. Once I did the math, because in D.C., regular court, you don't get sentenced in months, you get sentenced in years. When I got accustomed to months, I started doing 120s and doubles. All right, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. Damn, they say 263 months. Well, 120 months is 10 years. 240 months is 20 years. These bitches said they want me to do 263 months. It didn't make sense. I went berserk in my head. So I went over to the law library and I started studying, pulling out everything. And I met a guy named Burton Haywood, rest in peace. The old timers really didn't take the young guys serious in the law library. And I didn't like that when I was young. But this one dude, he seen something in me. He was like, man, Shawty, serious. He said, I'm gonna help him. And what he did was he showed me how to navigate the civil law. And I got back in court. Remember I said I pled guilty and I thought you couldn't do anything? Well, 2241 is habeas corpus. And habeas corpus in Latin means to present the body, produce the body. And you make a court or a judge produce your body when your body is being confined illegally. And I said in my court, in my litigation shit, that I was sentenced to 15 to life at 16. The judge took into consideration that I was a juvenile, and he said, you know what, you got a murder and some other stuff, but you're taking a responsibility for the crime. I'm gonna give you 15 to life. And he said to me specifically during sentencing, I don't know if you will ever get back, but if you do get back, if you can do 11 years and grow and do this and do that, then you will deserve a chance to get out. That's in my sentencing transcripts. The United States Parole Commission, I don't mean to sound belligerent, but they was like, man, that judge in D.C., this United States Parole Commission, and we want you to do this and do that. One thing you can't do to me, whether it's street, business, or anything, you can't f me over. So in the streets, if you f me over, I'm gonna react a certain way. In business, if you me over, in the context, I'm gonna react a certain way. And legally, when I realized that they was me over, the only way for me to say you're not gonna do it was in the law library. And I learned how to file 2241, and I filed it, and I found all the laws that made what I was going through illegal. And for lack of a better term, I never won in court, which is why I told you. I said, well, people say that, but I had a conversation with a family member the other night. Say, Eyone, even though you didn't win in court, you won. And they made me look at it in a certain way, which I'm presenting to you. And even though the 2241 motions, when you look them up, because you can look them up, they're going to say denied. But everything that I filed in it is why they released me 6 months later. So they kept denying and kept denying everything for 60 months. And I was supposed to see the parole board in November of 2009. I don't know if it was out of spite or what, but we was locked down. The D.C. guys and the Serenos on the compound I was on got into some fist fights. That's another thing about FCIs. Dudes get hit in there, hit, stab here and there, but it'd be a little less. Mm-hmm. And like I seen this, and this was the one time where I seen there was no knives involved, but they locked the whole joint down. And they came out the next day and they called people out of their cell, you know how they do. And people went to the parole board, and I'm laying in the bed, and they never called me. In a way, I was a little worried. I was like, damn, this parole, they supposed to come see everybody. You know when they coming and they didn't see me. I was a little down, and then I said to myself, all right, forget it. I'm gonna just have to get back to writing and petitioning. But they slid a piece of paper under my door this day, right before 10 o'clock, and they popped the doors at 10 o'clock to let the pound back out. And it was a piece of paper that said, we're gonna release you in March of next year. It was unbelievable.
Wow. Man. Imagine that. So basically,
even dudes that was there had never, I ain't gonna say they had never seen it, but
right.
In the way in which it happened for me, it was just an anomaly.
So, I mean, this whole thing being a DC black going through the system is an anomaly, you know?
Yeah, no, technically that's true.
So just to kind of put that all in a nutshell, just so I understand it, you were filing motions after you got denied the first time for parole after doing about 11 and a half years. You got denied for parole, so you started filing motions for 5 years that your sentence was unjust.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
The math was wrong. They sentenced you to too much time.
I ain't gonna say the math was wrong. My real issue was an ex post facto issue. An ex post facto issue means that if there was a law and a penalty in place at a certain time, no one can change the penalty at no other time.
Okay, so they were trying to give you minimum 20. The feds were right because
which was
of that
contrary
violent
to the
crime.
judge.
That's right.
I mean, even with the violent crime, they could have got away with punishing me for my behavior, but they cannot extend the sentence. Okay. They saying that I'm not even eligible to go home until 263 months was done. That's contrary to what the judge, and the judge is a more powerful authority than them. At least that was my argument, and that's what I argued.
And so when you finally went back at the 17-year mark, you showed them all these motions, even though they'd been denied, and you think that probably had something to do with their decision to let you out.
Nah, I filed the motions, and when the motions got denied, I got frustrated, and I filed to the legal, I forgot the name of it, I don't want to say it wrong, but the United States Parole Commission has a department or a part of it where you can ask for reconsideration based on legal things. And everything that I had filed that was denied, I took it and compiled it into one document. I wish I had ChatGPT back then. But I compiled it all into one document. So what I filed for my educational good time, what I filed for my behavior, what I filed from the judge, they shot it down. But I compiled all this after a case by the name of Selman versus the Parole Commission came out. Shout out to my man, Tony Selman. He had lawyers file it, and I went through his motion, and everything that he had in his motion that he won was in mine. Make a long story short, I ain't gonna get into that. I did some stuff with that too that took 16, 17 more. Everything took 16, 17 months. But I said, man, forget the judge. The judge is not trying to honor any of this because he was outside his jurisdiction, but a habeas corpus can only be filed in the jurisdiction that your body is in. So I filed everything that I filed to the courts, to the Parole Commission for what's called a reconsideration. I believe that they read the reconsideration, which is not technically a motion, it's just a legal letter. And I think that they said, this right, and even if he ain't win right now, he gonna eventually win. And they let me. That's what I believe.
Okay.
And if you look up Joyce Francis versus Eyone Williams, as I said, it says denied. So a lot of my homies used to be like, "Did Jones say denied?" I said, "Bro, I'm on the street, right? You calling from jail, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, that Jones saying denied. Look at the law in it and file what's in it. I'm home. I don't care if it say denied. I'm out."
That makes sense. So you would have won on habeas corpus or on one of these motions, of course, right?
I think so.
And the feds
are human. They don't like to lose. And they said, okay, stamp, let him out.
And if they would have, this
makes
is another
sense.
thing that I think, if I would have kept going the litigation route and I would have eventually won and it said granted,
Sued.
when dudes went into the law library, well, the sue part would have been great for me, but for
Yeah.
other people, they would have filed
Right.
exactly what I
Sure.
filed. And once it was granted, it have made it almost, I don't want to say landmark because there was other cases that I was using, but
Yeah.
it would have been like a landmark case. And that means you would have to free hundreds of guys from D.C.
Right.
It's dudes from D.C. right now, because we only ones still got the intermediate sentence,
Mm-hmm.
indeterminate sentence in the feds. It's only us. You might got somebody from Guam or Puerto Rico or somebody, I don't know, but like some of them Puerto Rican revolutionaries, if any of them are still in, they could have had 2 numbers, but I don't know that. But I know it's only D.C. And I know one dude right now that had 19 to life that he got in 90 or 89.
Mm-hmm.
19 to life. We know 19 years has passed, and he keep getting hit after hit after
Right.
hit after hit. So
yeah,
if
and
I
they-
would have won, I think it would have helped some of them.
Yeah, and they do think like that. They're so evil that they know that people have nothing to do but go to the library, have nothing but time. They go to the library and they're like, yeah, we can't let this guy, this rabble rouser, be thinking other people can get out. They're really, really evil. And, I hope to God they rot in hell. But listen, you've written how many books? Where could people go? This was all a long route to get to what you're doing now and promote your stuff. You wrote 13 books in prison or something like that?
I got 13 books published. I might have wrote 40 books in prison, but
Wow.
I got 13 books published under Eyone Williams. You can go to Amazon.com and type in Eyone Williams. There may be something on there that I forgot about, but I also have a website, EyoneWilliams.com. All my books are there.
And they're fiction, urban fiction, based off of characters, things you've been through, people you
Honestly,
met.
all of those books that I'm talking about right now, all of those are considered urban fiction. But I started writing urban fiction in a way where I was being very careful and selective. So a lot of true stories, not of my life, but of Washington, D.C. crime and underworld are in some of my books in a fictional way. As I mentioned a couple books that we was talking earlier, like I wrote the book Money Ain't Everything. That book is about a guy named Javier Panama Card. They had the longest drug trial, murder trial involving Metropolitan D.C. police in D.C. history at that time. I wrote a book about that.
Yeah.
And I could do this for every book. I could go and tell you what the real backstory of the book is.
Yeah. I mean, the stories from the feds are so fascinating that why not write a book about
Hold
them?
on. Being as though that you brought up stories from the feds, I forgot. My man told me make sure I mention it, so you just reminded me. I wrote the book, Lorton Legends, about all this stuff that we've talked about right now, and I fictionalized it because I didn't want to be what I called back then telling on somebody.
Yeah.
So-
No, I know. That's what you're doing. You're writing fiction based off of reality. That's
Yeah.
what entertainment is.
Right.
So go check that out. We're going to link in the description. Any particular one people should start out with?
I mean,
Of all
my
these
favorite
books?
book is Lorton Legends, since we talking about
Yeah.
this DC prison history. But for to be honest, just type in Eyone Williams. I got a unique name, and if you're into fictional reading and you like stuff about women or DC or history or crime or prison, I got all that in different ways.
And if you got somebody locked up, buy a book and send it over to them.
they
You know what I
definitely
mean?
like Lorton
Seriously.
Legends.
Lorton Legends. Okay, so start out with that. We're going to switch over to the Patreon and do a little bonus episode. Man, that was a fascinating talk. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming down here, man.
Appreciate you having me, man.
All right, you got it. Eyone Williams, go check him out.
DC Blacks.
DC
Make sure
Blacks.
you subscribe to the channel.
Oh, that's it. And your YouTube
That's
channel.
really what I'm on now.
Okay, go
YouTube
for it.
channel.
Eh,
DC Blacks.
Nice.
Just check it out. I got a lot of stuff on there about prison, but I'm getting tired of talking about prison, so now I'm kind of just expanding it to all my interests. Most of my interests are true crime, traveling, and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Awesome, man. Okay, so Lorton Legends, a book, and then subscribe to DC Blacks on YouTube. Thank you, G. I appreciate you. Patreon.com/The Connect Show for more with Eyone Williams. Take care. Peace.